Catherine, did I say that one was complicated? So the rest of the things he was like, he mentioned the Connor family. Yeah, he mentioned how he went to go watch him play basketball because he wanted to recruit him for wrestling. But he said he went over and he wanted to play basketball. And so he backed off. He's like, all right. But basketball is like, I see it.
But he was good at wrestling when they did the wrestling out in college, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he literally is good. He's one of the best. He's a little competitive. No, I
Okay, it's 6:01 and I am calling to order this regular board meeting of the Sunnyvale School District Board of Education. As an announcement, this meeting is available in English and Spanish. Would the translator please give instructions on translation services available?
Absolutely. Buenas noches. Se utilizará la función de interpretación de Zoom para soporte en inglés y español. Todos los participantes de esta llamada deben seleccionar su idioma de preferencia haciendo clic en el idioma correspondiente cuando el anfitrión active la función de interpretación. Dicha función se encuentra en el panel de herramientas en el icono del globo terráqueo. El modo de interpretación para esta reunión será el simultáneo. Gracias por su atención y colaboración. Good evening. The Zoom interpretation feature will be used in this Zoom meeting for English and Spanish support. All participants on this call must select their language of preference by clicking the language when the host turns on the interpretation feature. This is found in the world icon located on your feature panel. Interpretation for this meeting will be conducted simultaneously. Thank you for your attention and collaboration.
Thank you. Please note that a recording is being made at the direction of the board and that the recording may capture sounds of those attending the meeting. I see that we have a quorum. We have 3 trustees here, Trustee Maginot, Trustee Hubis Flammerich, and myself. Jeff is running a little bit late and we're expecting Nancy shortly.
Any minute.
Any minute. So let's rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Go to item 2, approval of the agenda. If there's any member of the public who'd like to speak on this item, which is solely just the approval of the agenda, please say so or use the raised hand feature if you're online. Can't see Aaliyah? No? Okay, not seeing any. Board, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I vote to approve the agenda.
I'll second that.
She can answer.
Thank you, Nancy. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote. All those in favor of the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and with that, the motion passes. We're on to item 3, review and discussion. It's the beginning of year data and California assessment of student performance and progress presentation. That's a lot of P's. Dr. Dean and Mr. Jonathan Watts.
Okay. Good evening, board. We come to you tonight, myself and Dr. Dean and Jonathan Watts, to present data. But before jumping in, we really want to say that this is on behalf of the Department of Teaching and Learning. We've all kind of weighed in different kinds of ways and got support to try to capture what is the most critical data to present to you this evening. There's some thoughts we want to share with you as we share tonight. This is our Sunnyvale story, but we also want to emphasize that sometimes the data doesn't look the way we want to, or maybe it's not viewed as favorably as we'd like it to be. Also with that data, sometimes that favorable rating comes from the California Department of Education or societal norms. But the piece that we want to emphasize is that we try to answer the difficult questions, and we try to answer those with who our students are and not just by test scores. And sometimes that means, what do they bring culturally? Who are they? What are their identities? What are their communities? And I'd like to share with you a quote that comes from the book Street Data. And it says, sometimes what is measurable is not the same as what is valuable. So as we go into the presentation tonight, we would like to let you keep those concepts in mind. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over at this time to Jonathan Watts, who's going to share some of our academic data with you. I'll let you do it, it's not clicking.
All right,
Okay.
I've had trouble with Clipper too.
Sorry, I'm just going to do a little spread around.
All right. It's a show too. Okay, so what we did this time was showing very kind of broad data as an overview. I know I gave you a lot of other data in the packet, but what I was going to show in these next two slides, and the reason, where do I point this thing to get it to go?
Over this way.
Okay, so this slide, take note.
Yeah.
So the front two slides, I wanted to share kind of an overview of looking at these demographic groups, which we know are historically underserved. So English learners, the bottom left is socioeconomically disadvantaged, and then bottom right, special education. This first slide is CAST, so our state testing data with math. And then this is our local data, so assessments that we use within our own district on reading. So I wanted to show the same groups, reading and math. And since this is really all of the schools, the grade levels combined, this is showing a really big overview. So more than really looking at individual student or individual grade level performance, the thing that I just want to call out, which is, unfortunately, when you look at a large group like this, predictable. This goes very similar with what you would see across the state. And while it is, when we look at English learners, socioeconomically disadvantaged families, and special education students and their achievement, you can tell that there's still quite a bit of work to do. When compared to the state, we are ever so slightly higher than the state average. And that doesn't mean, I want to emphasize that even though this is something that we expect, unfortunately, and it's something that you can predict based on demographic groups, it doesn't mean that we are just apathetic to it. So we know that this is the trend, and we are continually looking for ways to buck that trend and to make change. So I don't want to go too far over it, because that's just, the general gist is to show that we have work to do in these areas with these student groups. Okay, so some of the things I just wanted to highlight, and these are really the things, I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on, different initiatives, different ways that individual school sites have taken our district initiatives and then put their own twist to it, their own flavor, meeting the needs of their students. But I wanted to highlight just a few, just to kind of show the interconnectedness of these initiatives, how it's not just one group, it's not just teachers, it's not just coaches, but we try to hit in all different angles when we're working on English language development, and math has also been a big focus. So I just highlighted a few different things that we're doing across the district. And then I'm going to pinpoint a couple bright spots where we can show that we do sometimes beat the trend. And we do have these successes when you start to zoom in closer, and then talk about the work that we're trying to do to replicate that once we do see that we have these successes. So one of the things that we continue to do is build our foundational literacy training with new teachers, and then also missed grade levels. So some grade levels that during the pandemic, we weren't able to capture all. So this has been an ongoing effort that we've done with all of the teachers, every grade level starting at kinder and then working our way through. Because what we're finding is we really need to look at some of those foundational skills that sometimes even the upper grade students, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, are lacking. And this is kind of our systematic way of making sure that our teachers have the foundation and that they're able to assess that, see and identify when students have those needs, and then know what to do to respond to it. Second bullet is talking about our direct student services, formerly last year known as SEO TOSAs. So these are our teachers on special assignment who are doing direct intervention in schools.
And last year was kind of an exploratory time with different intervention curriculum where they were trying out several different math interventions, reading interventions. And then the one that they landed on for math this year that they've been working on is called Number Worlds. And the neat thing is this is also what landed with special education at the same time was piloting this curriculum. So we have that kind of integration across both. That's the new intervention math curriculum that they're working with. We're also working this year with one of our committees called the District Grade Level Leads. And the entire year is continuing on our work of last year on designated and integrated English language development through math. And then finally, I'm going to highlight a couple things that are connected with our continued focus on multi-tiered systems of support and then also student progress monitoring. One is Vargas, which is very helpful because Vargas is going to be presenting and we'll probably expand on some of this also in a bit. And Alice. So I'll talk about Vargas in just a second, and I have a slide that shows some of the highlights out of Vargas. Ellis, the reason that I wanted to highlight that also was because it has to do with progress monitoring, MTSS, English learners, foundational literacy skills, all this connected. So what they've come up with at Ellis this year is with the support of their direct student service, TOSAs, they're doing a screener for all of the first and second grade students on their foundational literacy skills. So they're using a program called ESGI that we've used for years in kindergarten and in transitional kindergarten to assess all the discrete skills. So like blending and segmenting, letter sounds, letter recognition, but they're doing it across the board in first and second so that they can look for any of those gaps that we may have and get them early while it's easier, I guess, to be able to address these before they've hit middle school or even in upper grades. So that's something that's new this year that they're trying out. I'm really excited to see how that works and monitor the data also ongoing to see what an impact that'll make. And then this graph is showing first grade. So this is all the first grade elementaries with the blue line showing the percent proficient. So out of all the, Lakewood, you have out of all the first grade students, the blue is showing what percent of those first graders are proficient in reading. And then the light green, probably should have chose two different more starking colors, but the light green in the middle is the English learners. So the percent proficient, same out of the first grade, that's the percent of English learners in first grade that are proficient in reading. And I wanted to highlight Vargas because this is the fun that I have with running data. So after every assessment period that we have, I run data in a variety of different ways. And then I look, part of it is just checking to see for accuracy, make sure that everything is represented so that it's going to help principals and teachers inform their instruction. But sometimes I'll see something really stand out. And my first thing is always to check, is that accurate? Did I do something wrong? Did I run this off? Like, did I mess up proficiency cut points or something? And I checked in every possible way because Vargas very much stood out with such a high, especially compared to previous years, high performance of both the first graders, but also their English learner performance. And so one of the things that I also look at a lot is the gap between the ALL and EL. And the closer that is, means we're serving them really well or better than we have in the past, English learners. Yeah, and so they're sitting here right below Cumberland and Cherry Chase at 60% with ALL and then 40.
Sorry, question?
Yes,
Just
yeah.
clarifying question, Isabel?
Oh, no, EO is English only.
Yes, EO is English only. I think someone had asked, could you add English only in there to be able to see, like what could have also put that number, the average in a certain way. So what's not listed then also, since we're talking about EO and EL, IFEP, which is initially English proficient, and then also redesignated English proficient. So we could also break those out, but I thought this is a good measure of it. So one of the things that I did when I see this type of data is I call over at Vargas. I'm like, hey, what can you tell me about your first grade? And what did you do last year with kinder? Is there anything different? Just kind of probing, trying to figure out, is there any logical kind of explanation for this? I also looked at, so then I start to also look at cohorted data. So I wanted to see, did these first graders last year end kindergarten with such a high proficiency? Was that something that I missed? And sure enough, I looked at between, I think, trimester 1 to the end of year last year, they went from 28% proficient to around 60% proficient. So that was huge gains last year too with their kindergarten cohort. And so they're going to expand more on this. It's great that they're here, so I don't have to do all the talking about it. But one of the things that I understand they've done is some revamped MTSS processes and really just having what I think like a point person at each grade level that's able to check in frequently with the grade level teams, just constantly bringing those students to the forefront. And they showed me their spreadsheet where they're monitoring progress, saying how they're progressing, what interventions they're working with them, different interventions and things that teachers have tried. And then there's also I know that they've done a lot around family home visits. So it's always, the hard thing is really pinpointing because it's never just one thing. You know, if it was one thing, it would be like, okay, great, there it is, let's copy paste everywhere. But when we see these and then we're able to find, well, here's the things that we did change. So both of these could have contributed to that. They also had a really high number of, I think this cohort go to summer school. So there's a lot of little things that we're trying to see like, okay, here's some of the things that may have contributed to it. So next steps are continuing that, I think, sharing with other principals. So commonly when we see something like this and we understand like, okay, there's something going on here that's good, sharing that strategy with other principals, other sites, and seeing if we can replicate some of that success. I'm gonna pass it back off to Tasha about some attendance data.
Let's see if I can have the same success you're having here.
Just up, down, left, right, back that way.
Okay, very good. So in addition to our academic data, we like to look at kind of whole child data. And so we'll start with attendance to kind of look at that district-wide and what that looks like. Oops, a little too quick. Oh, there we go. Oh, there we go. Very good. So as we look at our attendance data, we're looking at kind of the beginning of the year, kind of where we are and what's going on with that. And so as we look across the district, you'll see that we have about 84% of our students attending 90% of the time. So that's kind of our threshold that goes with status, that goes with, we know if students are present, then students are going to be accessing the learning that we actually are providing them. But I want to highlight a few points here for you to kind of take a look at. So when we look at our students who are kind of in the red not attending, we are working with our MTSS team. So we know who those students are, both at the site level as well as with our district SARB team, who basically is kind of monitoring this data. And that team's kind of led by Paul Slayton, who's supporting our teams with that. In addition to that, as we look at that, what's good about this is it is balanced across the group. So as you'll see there, you'll see English only, you'll see just kind of the district averages, you'll see our students with special needs. So while that may not be great, it's great in that it's a little bit easier to target if there's a similar average across the different groups and how we might intervene, and then also what resources we can provide to our students. So as Jonathan talked about a little bit, this year we've been really intentional with regards to attendance this year. We started at the end of last year working with the county on a co-op program. And the idea and purpose for that was just to kind of look at what you're doing, even if it's going well, and see if there's anything you can fine tune. And one of the things that we did learn by doing that is we did have some inconsistencies with our front office teams and how they were sending letters out, when, and how they were actually making phone calls to families. And so as a part of our structure for this year, we actually started out with our admin teams across the district and kind of did a targeted attendance training for those staff and created resources specifically for them so we can be more consistent across all of our programs with monitoring and also supporting students who might have attendance issues. So that's one of our big changes for this year. All right, thank you very much. Okay, so this moves us now into the next tier, which would be kind of talking a little bit about some of our behavior data for students. You'll see overall that 90% of our students are actually doing a pretty good job. And what does that mean for us? Yes, all students have some challenges from time to time, but what we're referring to here is when it begins to see a trend on the campus. And we utilize our Swiss database kind of to support that. So the teachers who are making referrals or things that are coming to the attention of the site administration. So that information, we're able to take a look at it here and look at those students who are English language learner status. We've kind of broken it out by the different groupings there. And then we also looked at our special education students with that. And so the main thing we want to emphasize here that you don't see is when students' behavior rises to a much higher level, that information won't be captured here on these charts. That information ends up making its way back to the MTSS teams. And now that becomes a targeted case for the campus to take a look at. The rationale for that is if we have one student who is having significant difficulties, then that kind of skews the data for the school site. So we remove that out of what we call the campus-wide data, because the purpose of this data is really to see, do we have a problem on the playground at recess time? Or is it in the cafeteria? Or where is it? So that we can target the resources on the campus, so where we might need to add additional behavioral support, might just need to change our practices, maybe we're not offering enough reinforcement to our students, whatever the case is. And so for the students who need a little bit more, then they're making their way to the MTSS team. And then those are also on the caseloads of our behavior supervisors in order to provide behavioral support, targeted behavior plans, and other resources that those particular students might need. The next area with regards to referrals, just kind of broke that out by grade span, so we can kind of look at that. As you take a look at that, we can see that we have some peaks. If we look at kind of our comparison data between 21, 22 with our first, fourth, and eighth grades in particular, we'll see that we have some increased supports and needs there. Also, if you look to fifth grade in particular, that particular grade you can see is just challenging for us. It was last year and it continues to be again this year. And so when we see those kinds of trends, we try to redirect the resources to those particular buckets. But we do know we have a trend there and we're trying to take a look at what's going on and what's happening in that particular area.
Hey, Tasha, can I ask the
Yes.
first question? So like with this, so like, it's not the same students, right? The 2 years, just the fifth grade students, right?
That is
So like in theory, it's the fourth grade kids last year and then fifth grade kids this year. That would be the same group of kids.
That is correct. That is correct. But the trends of them, when they get to that grade level,
yeah.
something's definitely going
Yeah.
on for sure. Okay. So now we'll switch to kind of talk a little bit about our social emotional data for our students. And this data comes primarily from our panorama survey that we give. We're currently in the midst of that right now. That survey data has gone out for the fall semester. So the data that we're sharing with you at this time is from our spring 2022 data. Overall, if you look to the percentage of students at the different grade levels, you see we are taking what's favorable, like whatever's left here are the other boxes that were considered to be not as favorable responses in these particular areas. We've highlighted the emotional regulation, the self-management, and the self-efficacy in particular because these are the buckets that when we can do a really good job of it with students, they have the higher probability of being more adjusted, being able to advocate for themselves and be more successful in their classrooms, on the campuses, and actually even at home. So we have that. I do want to highlight for the K2 grouping, that data comes in a little bit different way, just to clarify. That actually is perception data that's coming directly from their teachers. Just because of their age levels, that's kind of difficult for them to take a survey and be able to weigh on that. So this data is coming from the teachers and their perceptions, and then trying to weigh that in. And so we try to give them a little bit more time so they can get a sense of who the students are. And that's why we chose spring data too, because then by then, as a teacher, they'll have a really good sense of kind of who they are. And so that's kind of why we've chosen these buckets and kind of what we're looking at here. So this is that data, more specifically by emotional regulation, based upon the grade levels here. The types of questions that go into emotional regulation are things like, how do you describe your feelings? When people are around you, are you getting angry? Are you able to stay relaxed or not? When things go wrong for you, are you able to stay calm or do you get angry? So these are the types of questions that kind of make up this particular bucket of emotional regulation. Our next area, self-management, with regards to that, this is a really important one, especially as students begin to get a little bit older. We sometimes have an expectation that they know what to do. And sometimes that may or may not be the case. And so we have to do a little bit more scaffolding, a little bit more pre-teaching. In the classrooms, that's the circle time, that's, having spaces for students to just have a moment, if you will. And so on average, you'll see that our students in the self-management area are pretty consistent across the different grade levels. And so what does that say to us? This is definitely an area for us to continue working on, talking with students more, but it's also an area for us to work with our staff on. Because students definitely realize when staff are uptight or maybe not quite responding the way that they need to the behaviors that may be in their classroom. So this is kind of a two-pronged. We need to work through this with our staff, as well as to provide additional support for our students in this particular area. And as a result of this data, this year we are pairing some of our social emotional cultural work and our PBIS work as a team. So we have dual teamings at the school site that are really trying to reinforce those reinforcement strategies across the campus and the teaching within the classrooms for students to kind of acquire some of these skills. Beyond just having a social skills lesson, just really integrating that inside the classrooms. And then our last area, self-efficacy, I want to highlight a few points here with regards to that. I'd like to highlight the 8th grade students here. You'll see that they're kind of coming in a little bit lower. And so that's kind of was a red flag for us. It's red for all of these because we want to grow up, but these are students that are leaving us, moving on to the high school. And so unfortunately, or fortunately not, however you want to look at that, we really begin to have a high level of expectation for our students when they get to high school. And if our students are showing that they have a little bit more difficulty managing their learning, being in control of that, feeling like they can really advocate for what they need, then they tend to have more challenges and it becomes more difficult for them to be the independent learners that we really need them to be. So we will be highlighting this and talking more with this, and our middle school principals are somewhat aware of this data as well. And we think that our academic periods that we're having for our students at both the middle schools in different ways will begin to address some of these needs and supports that our students actually need. So this is just kind of a recap of the data. I think we wanted it broken out a little bit more. So this is just really going back through the earlier data as we look at our kinders with their different populations. I think we had a follow-up question about this with regards to English only, and the way we send out our data, that's not a kind of a bucket, if you will, that we're kind of measuring or ask about. But if for some reason that data continues to be in part, and we can go through the hard data and aggregate it out that way, but it's not as a part of the platform that it just comes to the top of the surface. Exactly, yeah. We'd have to go in and kind of filter in order to get that, but we could get that information if it continues to be important. But it does give you a sense that while the different groupings are a little bit different, we'll see that when our kinders are coming in, the English language learners you'll see are actually doing pretty well with regards to the emotional regulation, but then things begin to make some transitions in the other buckets. And so we definitely have additional work to do, not just with our special groups, but actually across the board as it relates to our students. And in our next slide with our 3-5 students, you'll see a similar theme that we continue to need to provide more targeted supports for students. And the big area is just kind of acquiring and being able to make decision skills. That's kind of where it's coming up. And we see that also for the cases that come to us at the district office where sites are having a little bit more difficulty, just students being able to make some of the difficult decisions with conflict or problem-solving skills or things of that nature. And we'll see the continued theme here at our middle school level. Again, highlighting that 8th grade area that we really want to emphasize on students being able to be in charge of their own learning and being independent in that learning and be able to advocate for what they need, because that's a big part of that self-efficacy area. And so with that, we can take questions.
Okay, so, did I shut that off? I did not. Okay, thank you so much. And before we get into the board discussion, I just did want to open it up for checking for public comments. So if there's any member of the public who would like to speak on this discussion item, the beginning of your data, please either raise your hand or use the raise hand feature now. Okay, seeing none, board, we had planned for a discussion to go till about 7 o'clock. So just at that time, we can check in, and if we need to go a little longer, we can. But the thought was that we would, this is part of our 3-part conversation about data. And so we'll be having another discussion in two meetings about more data, and we can revisit this as part of the discussion about our Spanish-speaking community. So with that, board, who would like to begin our discussion?
So I'll just start by like reminding us of the those 4 questions. I thought they were kind of good, the guiding questions. So can you hear me? Okay. When examining the reading and math data, what similarities or differences do you see among student groups? When examining the data across domains, what connections do you see? What additional information might be helpful in clarifying connections and informing the next steps? And the last one was, what direction and policies can the board provide input on that might help direct student achievement?
Was there any one of those you wanted to focus on or start talking about?
No, I just wanted to like remind us of those. I said they were good questions.
Okay,
I have nothing to do with it.
okay. Nancy, did you have something?
Do we hear from them first and then?
I asked for public comment, nobody wanted.
No, I mean for Dasha to answer those 4 questions and.
I think those were our
us to
discussion
discuss.
questions.
Okay.
Nancy, you're still mute.
Oh, sorry. So I guess what I'm seeing as far as social emotional regulation behavior would align with the fact that young children didn't have any models during the pandemic of what classroom behavior was supposed to be like, because they only experienced school within a virtual reality until the until that springtime last year. So while I'm seeing a lot of, so when I look at that data, I filter it through that particular lens. And so I wonder what it is that we can do with intentionality to continue to give what appropriate expectations are for kids who haven't seen it modeled, with their models being students who also haven't had it modeled for them as well.
You know, what was funny about that is that I thought it was interesting, actually, I thought it was interesting that the younger students were scoring so much higher on that survey. But then you mentioned, well, it's the teachers who are observing that, and we don't really actually know, like maybe that's based on their behavior, like are they acting out in class, but like their internal self, we don't necessarily know, but are they able to sit on the carpet or things like that? But I do understand what you're saying from the school closure and the pandemic having an effect. But the youngest children seem to be
They're
scoring higher by adults. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
Oh, is it that way? Because I I was gonna ask about it. I'm like, why is there higher? Because scientifically, usually when you're younger, you have less good emotional, right? Like you develop it more. So it would be interesting if we had we don't survey the older teachers, right? We just have the data from the kids, right? Because that would be interesting, like from teachers' observations, do older teachers think their students are as well self-regulation as
That's what I
younger
was
kids?
thinking
Like that would
too.
be a very interesting,
We don't have to do that.
like are the kids just, yeah, the kids are more sure on themselves, right? Than like the teachers would be, or are we seeing that in society that as people are getting older, they actually are struggling more with?
Or maybe they're struggling on the inside and we just can't see it, right?
Yes.
So that's.
I would definitely say we had some signs of that in communications from our sites and directly from students. There is some struggling on the inside as well, for sure.
Sorry, Nancy, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just.
No.
What were you saying?
No, it's like, I'm just trying to capture that, because I just had this different concern that they may have, it may have been more challenging, so, or maybe it's that the teachers had appropriate expectations of where those kids might be, and they were better than what they had anticipated. When you're talking about perception. So that they exceeded their expectations. So that's exciting. You talked about strategies for 8th grade and understanding where 8th grade are. Can you tell, I didn't ask this question, but I'm wondering, as we've been talking back and forth about articulation with Fremont High School, are they using Panorama as well?
As of to date, I don't think they are.
Ah,
I know
okay.
they do something.
Parent, I don't think I've done a
Yeah.
parent.
I know they're doing things, but exactly what they're doing, I'm not 100% sure, to be honest.
Okay, it may be interesting to find out what they are utilizing and see if there's any way of correlating how our kids are continuing to progress as they matriculate through the high school as well, because I am concerned about challenges that 8th graders have anyway in that challenging age of independence overlaid with hormones and big transitions, what we can do to better support them. And so I was just curious about if there was any data that we could continue to follow and monitor progress.
Great question, and I do know that's on our dock of things to do, is to better interact with the high school with regards to data across the board, actually, but it's definitely out there and something we plan to do.
Okay, thank you.
Isabel?
Yes, so last year we started with, the plans were presented with the multi-tier levels of support. We had tons of TOSAs and instructional coaches for the teachers. And well, I suppose it was a very hard year anyway. There were a lot of COVID and a lot of absences in the middle, but still I expected like the numbers will rise a little bit, or at least not sunk that much at the end of the year. So are we adjusting something, or we are just trying harder or to the same levels with the TOSAs, the intervention, taking the kids out, looking for support for the families? What are the adjustments that are we gonna do?
I want to be sure I got your question. So what adjustments have we made with regards to attendance and other areas with our TOSAs that are working at the school sites? Is that the
Yes,
question?
how have they helped to improve the achievements of the kids? Because the idea was to try to help, depending on different schools, we had like the 20% bottom that were at the bottom, or the 25% that were at the bottom. We're gonna try to bring them up to the level.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of, discussions, and then each of the principals brought their plan and their ideas and what they needed, and the district tries to support
Well,
them
I'll
when
give
they need
it,
it.
I'll give a general, but also the plans that are being looked at later in the conversation. A lot of that specific, very detailed information is actually in those plans, but how we have supported and how sites are dealing with that is they have their resources, but in addition to what we have as our district goals, they are also looking at their site-specific data. So whether it, because what we're doing at the district may or may not be where their targeted most critical needs are. So in addition to what we're doing at the district level, they're looking at what they need to do specifically at their sites, and they're deploying the resources in that targeted way. So whether that's small group instruction, whether that's targeted group for newcomers, whether that's a blend of all of that, and then at the same time, doing as much as we can from the district office, supporting the site, TOSAs, as well as instructional coaches, so that they have the tools and resources they need to coach and support the teachers at their site, so that that tier 1 intervention is happening in the classroom, so that we can do that targeted work, and then doing double dosing for students who just have holes in skills, maybe it's fluency, phonics, whatever the case might be, giving those students, trying to fill those holes where we can. I will say for some sites, the need is greater than potentially some of the resources we have. That is a reality. And then we're also working hard to deploy resources to intervene with mathematics, which is an area of need. You've kind of heard that. But we've been working on resources to support in that area, to support the TOSAs and instructional coaches at the sites to do that work as well. So it is a little bit different from site to site, but it is being targeted to the students who have some of the greater needs.
Go ahead.
Yeah, can I jump in? So I would say a couple things. First of all, the one, and I'll put intervention in air quotes, that's going to happen this year over last year is that the students are going to be present. So I don't mean that to be funny, but like there was so many student absences for 10, 20, 30 days, 40 days last year. Site people are nodding your heads, that actually the results that you're seeing would be expected if students miss that much time, right? So the first thing is we're really hopeful that students will just be present so we have a chance to make a difference. Okay, that's without us doing anything. Well, actually, there's a lot of work you have to do to get kids to improve their attendance. You know what I mean? Secondly, principals, we're meeting with them. I've been meeting with them individually, and now we're having them come in and meeting with executive cabinet and talking about just the various interventions that they're using. So you asked about we called them EO TOSAs before, now we're calling them direct student services TOSAs and instructional coaches. Like one thing that we're finding is that schools that also have paras, when they match the para up with the TOSA, that TOSA, or not, when that para now has direction from a credentialed teacher, and we expect that that's going to produce better outcomes for the kids that the para is working with, as opposed to them not having that. I was out at Lakewood yesterday, and their whole focus this year is called the Para Push. So they have a larger number of paras than other schools, and so and they're really deploying them, what appears well. Now, what we're asking principals to do in our meetings is be assessing the effectiveness of these interventions, because these interventions are happening as a result of one-time dollars that we got, still left over from the COVID dollars. And it's like this is the year where we think that it can really make an impact. And so we're asking them to assess that. We're going to meet with them again, the principals again in December, and say, okay, what's working, what's not working as well, stop doing that, do more of the other. Jonathan alluded to a strategy that's working at Vargas. We want to collect the strategies that are working well and do more of that. So I don't know, that adds a little bit to Tasha's.
That was pretty much my question, because we put all the money from the COVID into the TOSAs and the strategy, and still those 20% that were helping, apparently we didn't help. So are we pushing forward to that? Are we strategizing what worked and what didn't? Because we need to choose, isn't it?
Right.
But I also think it's important, like with that data that we looked at in the packet review meeting, we pulled up the CAST reports from 2019, like for fun, like to look at the data. And we noticed that like the scores, like even though the scores You know, the amount of kids, the number of kids that were actually like proficient or like approaching proficiency, like they were in the yellow or the green, that seemed to look about the same, but the kids who were below grade level, those bars looked different. It was, instead of being like a more of a even mix between yellow and red, it was mostly red now, right? And like that's everything we've been hearing about the results of the pandemic and everything and all the disruption from last year and stuff. And the other thing is that, you know, I was just thinking about these CASP tests, and it seems it's absolutely not an excuse, but like the fact that we had to go back to 2019 to find the last time kids took a test. I mean, last year we were building children's stamina for like sitting still and reading, like, you know, imagine the kids who were in, you know, maybe 5th grade who hadn't taken a test, like they didn't take a test in 4th grade, they didn't take a test in 3rd grade, and in 2nd grade, they weren't expected to take a test. So like all those things, like they might not really be very good at taking tests either, you know? So it's like one more thing, all the stress and the buildup. But I just feel like for me, when I look at that like red bar, I just think, you know, I'm just hoping our district can find a way to build an extended time and to support the teachers who like, maybe they have a lot of kids who are far below grade level, like not just like, and whether that's like what we're doing with summer school or, you know, extended day or whatever. I just feel like, I mean, I don't know what it is, but just.
Or an extra special thing, I don't know, day or something.
So, yeah, some fantastic magical thing. That's what we need. But
Take it
it's
out of
just,
your head and.
yeah,
If I
just,
existed, it already would have happened.
innovate. But I think that for me, like the issue is just like how far below grade level that red line represents. Is it a full grade level? Is it 2 full grade levels? Is it 3? Like, where are those kids? And I know that the principals and the teachers know, but like that's the part that scares me, because every time even when we pull them for intervention during the day, I just spoke to a Bishop parent like last week, and she was saying that, you know, her child gets pulled out of the classroom like 4 times during, you know, whether it's math or reading, and they come back to the classroom and they feel, you know, they're missing what's going on. And, you know, like my oldest son, when he especially needs, the older he got, the less he wanted help, you know. And so I know there's all these different factors and it's complicated, but I feel like I'm happy we have the numbers, and I know that teachers aren't happy about it. Nobody, the kids don't like to take the test probably, but like I'm happy we have them just so we can like understand like where they're at, you know, which is not great right now, but it's gonna get better. I feel like the stuff was gonna work this year, like if we can just give it a full chance. That's just my feeling though. I could be totally wrong.
But we certainly hope you're correct.
Just like as she was talking, then I kind of pulled up, you know, looking at all the red, right, especially as we look at, you know, when we take it apart from just like the whole district, right, breaking down those groups, right? So I was just thinking about like if I was a teacher and like saw this, right, that's gonna feel super overwhelming, right? Like you look at the first number, okay, not so bad, like there's a lot of green, and then you break it down, okay, my kids that are low income, my kids that are special ed, my kids that are EL, there's like other groups too that probably are really high in red, right? Like I look at that and I'm like, oh my gosh, you almost are gonna feel like a lost, right? Like how do I even do this, right? So my question is, what are we doing to help teachers instead of feel discouraged about the data? Like and I guess principals too, right? Like instead of being discouraged, like excited about it? I don't know what the word is, right? But I hopefully you're understanding kind of what I'm getting at.
Well, what I would say is the teachers and the principals have a added benefit is they know the kids personally. And that's kind of why I shared the quote at the beginning. Sometimes what's measurable is not what's really valuable. They see the social emotional growth of a child. They see a child who couldn't sit in his seat, but now the kid's in classroom all day. They see the kid who couldn't read, but now is able to read and identify and know which way to read in a book. So they get to see all those developmental milestones that unfortunately a standardized test does not capture. And so I think that is what motivates the teacher and excites the principal and, you know, all of those things. So they get those tidbits along the journey. And of course, it's frustrating. We want all of our students to be proficient, But when you can see that the work and the targeted areas that you put time in made a difference for a kid and they grew, maybe they're not proficient, but they grew and they're feeling good about themselves, that definitely can bring some joy and some smiles to both teachers and their administrators.
I think focusing on the small wins makes things a lot more motivating, manageable when you set this grade. And it's helpful to move students along. So like one of the things that I found last year when I was trying to measure some of the impact of the SEO TOSAs, the direct student services TOSAs, was, and this is what you're probably seeing also with CAS scores, is if we just measure using that test, like a comprehension or overarching kind of thing, which I was attempting to do, it's not capturing all of the work that they've done building up to that. So for example, I was running reading levels and I was looking at some of the groups they had worked with before and after. But what I realized after, when I really started, and this should have been really elementary to me, but as I started talking with the DSS TOSAs, the ones that are doing intervention, they were working on things like recognizing letters, recognizing letter sounds, and that's not going to get captured in CAS. But the student may have gone from knowing no letters, no letter sounds, can't blend, to being able to do all of that. But that still isn't going to get them to move a full reading level. So if I'm just measuring, if I'm looking at our success, just like how many reading levels did they move? And while like they're still behind, we still need to move more, for someone that's far below grade level, just moving the average amount isn't going to do it. You need to move more than that. But when you start to look at the building blocks for that, they may have really accomplished a ton with all those building blocks. It just won't be measured with like CAS or, reading levels, something that is, I don't know how to describe that, like a more holistic kind of big picture thing, but they've got all the foundation that's there. And so I'm hoping that when we set these discrete goals, when we're really targeted and focused on that and continue to get those wins, eventually they'll have all the building blocks and then that'll translate. Because as we see, like I used to teach first grade, and once the kids start to read, man, they take off. Like it's exponential. It's not the same ramp. Like you've got the building blocks, but once they're able to start reading and you can work on some of those deeper comprehension skills, they can really take off. So that's one of the things too, is if we're not focusing on just CASP, and that's what we're working on this year also with the DSS TOSAs, is measuring the more discrete goals. So even the way that I'm tracking their success, I'm having them measure those discrete goals in 6-week cycles, and then they're reporting to me in my system, just saying whether the student met or did not meet within 6 goals. So that, or 6 weeks. So that way I'm able to track the success of this program more than just doing these reading levels, because they may still be in level A or whatever it is. But all the skills they just got, that's huge. So
I was wondering if you could, either you or Dr. Gallagher or somebody could talk a little bit, because I think the other piece of it is the focus on instruction, the classroom instruction, the walkthroughs that you're doing, the equity walkthroughs or the class to class, because I think that is like the coaching that's going on at the site levels, because, for me, like I feel really lucky. I've loved all my kids' teachers, they've had a really good experience. When my kids were struggling, I was able, I had time, I could go in and advocate for them. I like burst into tears or something and they pity me. But I had time to like go and advocate and like, I didn't face a lot of, bias or something, like they basically like looked at me and they responded to me and everything was cool. So I feel like, we probably, we've talked about doing anti-bias training in our, where the rubber hits the road. And we talked about all the instructional work that's going on and the coaching that's going on. Because, we want kids to be held every kid to be held a high expectation and stuff like that. So maybe you could, I think that's something that they were saying was gonna make a difference. But I was hoping that you guys, okay, Nancy, just 1 second. I want them to answer this because I know they're doing a lot of work on it.
Okay. I don't know if Christina's here, I can't see behind me, but I'll give you an overview. And if Christina wants to jump in with additional details on that, because she's leading the forces with that. But first and foremost, the valuable part about that is we wanted uninterrupted time for our instructional leaders of the campus, which is our principals and APs too, to be able to really just get in classrooms and have dedicated time to have conversations about what they're seeing and what instruction is, and working on a culturally responsive pedagogy and approaches within the classroom. So that's kind of like the first step, just to get there and be able to think that. Principals are so often so engaged in all the operational things that go on the campus as well. So this was our dedicated attempt to give them that opportunity to have that those conversations, and those things are happening. The added advantage that it's also giving us from a district leadership standpoint is it's putting us on the campuses more often and more of an instructional supportive role than just being a support from the district office. So that's kind of 2 points that it's supporting more specifically. And if Ms. Valentine would like to add anything, we'd love for her to do so if she wants to.
Give you a thumbs up.
Okay, all right, all right.
I'm happy to, but
Yeah.
and Catherine is in the front row. Who's participate, Catherine and Vivian, so, you know, we can talk about it, but they're also experiencing it, so if they want to add any perspective as people who are participating in the walkthroughs. Just to put you on the spot.
I mean, I can say after going through it just last week, I think.
Yeah, just a week.
Just a week ago,
Yeah.
just going through it from last week and having that uninterrupted time, the support from the district to come and do the operations part so that we could be in classrooms was invaluable. It was a great first experience.
So you were thinking that would help move the instructional, right?
That's a part of it. Did you want to say something, Catherine?
Sure.
See, now you got them started.
In addition to that, doing it this year after what a tremendous feat last year felt like, it really has allowed us to kind of take the blindfolds off from, like, we were boots on the ground, dealing with COVID, dealing with so many different things last year in addition to instruction. And this just really felt like in a year where some of the COVID lifting is off our plates, and we're, you know, kind of living with it, not necessarily managing it from day to day. Now we can really dig into what really matters, which is teaching and learning. And these opportunities to do these walkthroughs, I think, are going to make a really tremendous impact on next steps for what's happening in classrooms with students.
Thank you, Catherine.
Okay,
And
Nancy,
Vivian.
I'm sorry, Nancy?
So a theme that seems to be running through this is changing how we're messaging. I'm noticing there was the intentionality of how we are messaging families who for whatever reason are having challenges having their children come to school. We're changing our messaging about looking at progress rather than a score measure. I think that finding out what message is most meaningful to families that we can share with these strategies moving forward. Example, Vargas is going to be really important because I want to make sure that the kids feel no matter where they score, that they are successful in making progress themselves. It's that self-reflection. It's also those teachers realizing that they are making a difference, even if a score doesn't is important data, but it may not tell the whole story. Those are the kind of messages that I want to be mindful this year that we're focusing on and seeing how impactful they can be in continuing to do that heavy lift to get to the big space. It's that celebrating of the small wins matter.
Absolutely, and I think the other big emphasis is with the walkthroughs that we're doing and also some of the other work is also ensuring that we also believe students can do it and not making excuses for what's not happening, understanding it and letting it inform our practice, but not using it as an excuse not to intervene, not using it as an excuse as to why they're not progressing, but trying to figure that out. And that's also in combination with our efforts to improve our parent engagement this year in different kinds of ways, because we also need our families to help us too, because there's stories that we don't know. There's supports that our families can offer, and we want to equip them to help us on this journey. So that's the other strategic thing that we're trying to do as a district as well this year.
Thank you. Okay, it's 7 o'clock. Does anybody want to share a final thought before we move on? You good? Okay.
Thank you for the work you guys do.
Yeah, thank
For the
you.
data.
Thank you.
Yeah, great presentation, and can't wait for the next one. Which is
Lower
gonna be
minds next time.
yeah.
It'll be better.
But no, it'll be great because this is a great foundation, and I think, these discussions where we can go through the data deeply and not feel super rushed, and then look at some more data, so it's gonna inform all of our decisions, and it's really helpful, so thank you. Okay, board, do you wanna take a 5-minute quick break? Yeah, I'll take a 5-minute quick break until, we'll return at 7:06, and we'll be right back. Thank you. to item 4, comments from the board and superintendent. We can go down the line or start with whoever would like to begin. Let's see, I don't see Nancy there. Do you want to start? Isabel, do you want to start? We'll start on this side and we'll go that way this time.
Okay. Okay, so we have been, Trustee Watson and I have been visiting shelters around the county that receive families and kids, and we've seen some pretty awesome shelters that really leave our shelter in Sunnyvale to shame, sadly. Some of them even have preschools, have daycares, have all services together in the same building. They look like any other apartment building in the block. You wouldn't even know those are shelters for families, with gardens for the kids to work with, activities for the kids. I mean, it's really like they even have a teacher in the afternoon giving them after school lessons so they can catch up and try to treat the emotional support that the kids need. So it's a really, they have been, most of them, amazing. So that's something that, yeah, we would like to see how we can work with everybody that can help to make the shelters in Sunnyvale a bearable experience for our children. And then, well, on the other side, the good news, we're starting to work with Hoffman Awards. That's a happy one. Hoffman's just open. We already have the readers, so I'm reviewing everything to see if there is any change I need to do before we start training readers, and it will have, so if we have anything.
It goes out to the district October 15th.
Huh?
It goes out to the district soon and.
Yeah, it will start preparing for that. We've been working just a little bit on the SMS teacher appreciation for this year. We still don't have a theme. I went today to a great tour given by the Morgan Hill president of the board and the principal of the school. It's a math music school. Everything is PBL, everything is project-based. It's a full K-8 music and math. And even the middle school classrooms look like Explorer classrooms, working in a very active way, hands-on education. Everything was built on hand, everything like really amazing. So yeah, we're gonna talk more about that. And then thank you to the superintendents and Superintendent Gallagher who went to the SCC SBA meeting. Was great. We talked about
Oh, that's right.
yes. Well, you guys probably talk more about that, but it was a great meeting, and yeah, I think that's pretty much.
Thank you. Jeff?
I don't have much. My trip was wonderful. It was so nice to just relax. And then, back just doing the regular stuff with lots of things to read and webinars. And tomorrow is the first Project Cornerstone lesson I get to do. So excited about that.
Thank you. Nancy?
Yes. I also appreciated the Santa Clara County School Board Association first group meeting. That was exciting to attend. I wanted to let the public know that I am remote in Florida, taking care of some family emergencies. And because of the time change, I'm going to be leaving the meeting early because I have a very early appointment tomorrow that I need to meet. So probably after the Vargas presentation, I will leave so I can get maintain my adequate health while I'm away, and looking forward to returning next week, hopefully. So thank you.
Thank you. So I sent my activities in general. I also did want to thank Dr. Gallagher for coming to the SCC SBA meeting. They actually had a superintendent panel that he was on, and it was talking about cultivating positive district culture. And it was extremely inspiring and very reassuring to all the other trustees who were there. Everyone really appreciated it a lot. And so people had all sorts of good ideas, and they said, what's the name of that group? And like Acknowledge Alliance, you know, and we're like, you know, and it was just really nice to hear everyone's ideas and on that. So that was great. And then I wanted to mention Michelle wasn't here last time, so when she and I were at our first board office hours in September, a couple of themes came up, which were really talking, a lot of families came in. We didn't get a chance to update the board, but a lot of Michelle can chime in on this part too, but a lot of families who came in were very interested in discussing transportation issues and discussing student nutrition. And, you know, I was happy to follow up with some of those people because we've been talking about transportation the last meeting, and we're going to talk about it later tonight. And student nutrition has come up as a theme in talking to other parents as well. And so, you know, one parent came in and said that their child had been eating student lunches and had gone to the pediatrician and had been diagnosed with obesity and was really trying to talk to us about the student lunch. And I know you went to check out what was being served like right after that, right? Like at the lunch or something?
We just happened to be really
Yeah.
walking somewhere and Mike and I went and left it.
And so I think that, you know, I don't know if we actually have it calendared for a student nutrition update, but I think it's going to be something people are interested in. And then I went to a couple of community events, and another issue that was coming up was
Wait, before you jump to the next
Oh, sure.
thing, let's say, so one other thing from that, which you weren't aware of. So kind of when we were finishing up, I went over and talked with like our interpreter and then the parents who were talking with her, and I just kind of said, hey, like I heard them, I saw them like just chatting, and I said, like, share with me what you were talking about. And so they shared some concerns, and it was actually one of my questions, the like Vargas one that's not actually related to her presentation. They just shared some concerns about when the bus gets dropped off in the middle school, sometimes issues happening, and then also not even bus related, I think just the kids hang out there, like at KLIS pickup, and so there was just some concerns.
the middle school kids.
Middle school, it could even be high school kids too,
Yeah.
like the parents didn't know, it was just older kids hanging out right outside of where the KLIS pickup is, and so I just shared with Mike just to like, just for the awareness, and there might have already been some, but that was what those two parents were kind of most concerned about.
Yeah, and I think they did address that in the packet review. I think we're gonna hear more later. And then at the community meetings, there was a lot of discussion around volunteering, and you know, I think that, you know, the board should be aware that everyone's back and everyone's super excited to volunteer, and it's just trying to get all the systems in place, you know, to get everybody able to participate with all the, you know, just messaging and the forms and everything like that. And, you know, we may hear a little more tonight about, you know, from families, but the issues, like especially with our families who maybe are less like well represented in the general population, like maybe some of our undocumented families. We had some discussions with their allies who are saying things like, you know, it's hard enough to get people to volunteer, but if they have to do fingerprinting, that's just like prohibitive because it's so scary for them. So I just think like the better messaging we can get out and just having the clinics for fingerprinting would be great. And then I don't know if there's a possibility, I know the foundation is helping funding with clearance, which could cover TB or fingerprinting. But again, it's the what people have to go through if they are from other countries and the TB test.
So I'll just add anecdotally my own experience. It took me over 2 weeks back and forth with my doctor and the system and the complications just to get my TB assessment, right? So I was actually getting stressed since I'm going in tomorrow. Luckily, I got my approval like 2 days ago. But right, just even, right, like that's nothing to do with, it's not the district's fault, it's not the district, but just that reminder of, it is not an easy process, right? Like I had to like stick with it and this is all medical side related, but it is not an easy process, whether it's district related or outside of the district.
Well, you know, when.
Getting your medical stuff you
Remember,
need.
this is an agenda.
Right, okay, so, anyway, so that came up and, and also just the idea about getting to a doctor's appointment and, all that other stuff. And what they have to go through at the county, I think someone shared with me that if you, test positive for TB, that you're referred to the county and you have to take antibiotics and it's a mess. So anyway, whatever we're doing, I know we're working it out and I think that those, I was like super happy to be able to report back to people that we were at least having the fingerprinting clinics. So that's all I wanted to share. That was just my mini community update. Go ahead.
Okay,
Thanks.
3 announcements. First, next week, the management team starts its equity coaching with Dr. Tracy Benson and his group. And so that's exciting. So this is kind of the completion of the puzzle with the equity walks that were referenced earlier. This provides equity coaching for each of our site leaders and for the district level leadership as well. So we're really excited about that. There's a question about like, well, do the equity walks include like facilities equity and things like that? And like, no, but this helps develop our leaders, including me, I'll get a coach for this too, to develop our lens of equity as we look more broadly at issues of equity.
Dr. Gallagher, can I add one thing?
Absolutely.
It's a little more than the equities, and I do want to emphasize that because that's really important. That's the distinction for this year. It's really anti-racist work. And so in addition to equity, it's anti-racist work and improving our social, emotional, cultural lens. So I just wanted to clarify that and make that distinction.
Good, yeah. And the book we're reading is Unconscious Bias in Schools, so if you want to look for that. Okay, next announcement, Author Week concludes tomorrow. And if you haven't gotten out to a school yet to see that, tomorrow's the last day. I will be at Bishop from 8:30 to 9:30. I'm not an author, I'll be watching. Matt De La Pena is the author, and he'll also be at Lakewood between 10:20 and 11:20. So it's your last chance for Author Week. It's really exciting. The kids all get a book, they read the book, and then the author comes and the book comes even to more life from hearing from the author. And huge amount of thank you to our district librarian, Rachel Bross, for putting this together. She couldn't be more excited about this. And so she'd love, if any of you can make that last day, that would be great. She would love it, and I think you'll appreciate it too. Then the last announcement has to do about fingerprinting. And so actually our first of 3, it's just the start, fingerprinting clinics, I guess, if you will, is tomorrow. We've just about filled it up. And then there'll be 2 more planned. I think there's something like 40 or 50 people being fingerprinted tomorrow. So we are doing what we can to address that. We realize that there was like 3 barriers I identified. Cost, accessibility. So there's one thing about it costs something, but just being able to get to the place where you're fingerprinted. And then the issues that you were referencing, Bridget, around just trepidation around actually having data entered into a system or fear around that we have to, those are all barriers to parent participation that we're going to do everything we can to address while maintaining good practices around liability. So those are my announcements.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, so it's time for comments from the Sunnyvale Education Association. I don't see anyone here, but if you're online, please use the raise hand feature now. Okay, seeing none, it's item 6, comments from the California School Employees Association. If there's an official online, please use the raised hand feature if you wish to speak. Okay, seeing none, it's item 7, comments from the public. This is the time to comment about things that are not on the agenda. This portion of the agenda provides an opportunity for members of the public to directly address the governing board on any item of interest to the public. However, provisions of the Brown Act Government Code 54954.2a and .3 preclude any action being taken on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. In plain speaking terms, the board can only receive information at this time. We cannot speak about items that are not on our agenda. If you'd like to comment on any item not on the agenda, in person, I have 3 speaker cards. If anyone else has arrived, please submit them. And if you'd like to comment from home, please use the raised hand feature now. Okay, we have one online. We're going to take the comments from the public in person first. Number 1 is Katie House. And as Ms. House is coming up, I'm just going to read a little courtesy reminder for everyone. Okay, so please remember time limits allocated to public testimony are 3 minutes per person and 20 minutes total for public comments. Speakers are asked to give their name and affiliation so that an accurate record is reflected in the minutes. If you're in person, you can provide us with a speaker card. As a reminder, per our bylaw 9323, the board shall not prohibit any public criticism of its policies, procedures, programs, services, acts, or omissions. During public comment, we encourage speakers to discuss issues with civility, to treat people whose opinions differ from their own with respect, and to focus on ideas, policies, and values. Ms. House, you may go ahead. You have 3 minutes on when you begin.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Katie House, and I'm speaking as an individual San Miguel parent. I'm involved with volunteer recruitment at our school for Project Cornerstone as one of the leads, as well as a member of the PTA board at San Miguel. I'm here to bring attention to the inequality in the volunteer clearance process with respect to TB testing. It is imperative that the district know that for many in our community, getting a TB test is not as simple nor is it as straightforward as it sounds. It can be a scary and stressful situation. I would like the district to support the process of acquiring a TB blood test for the SESD community in order to make testing more accessible and affordable to our community. I'd like to provide 3 scenarios for you. Scenario 1, person A needs TB clearance. Person A has all of their medical records up to date in one place at a healthcare provider's office. Person A gets out their insurance card and ID, calls the healthcare provider and sets up necessary appointments, gets a blood test and receives results and assigned documentation from the said healthcare provider. It is free and easy. This person is insured and this person is affluent in our community. The second scenario, person B goes to a free clinic where they have previously received treatment in order to obtain a TB blood test. Person B is told that their registration at the clinic has lapsed and they will need to re-register in person at a second location with documentation and ID provided again, and then they can return to the first location to set up an appointment to acquire this TB test. This person does not have insurance, and this person does not have time to drive all over town to go to 2 different places, to re-register in a system they're already in, and then provide funding for all of this as well. Person C, scenario 3, heard from friends that because they received the TB vaccine from their home country, they are not able to receive clearance from the district because their friends couldn't do so. Person C didn't bother to look at the link or look at the permission click form from the district because they'd heard other information. All 3 of these scenarios have happened this year at San Miguel with respect to acquiring clearance. I asked the district to consider an on-site testing day at the north and south side location in the district to help facilitate the process. Along with this, I asked the district to consider an educational campaign with respect to TB test results and how one moves forward in the volunteer clearance process having received a vaccine from TB. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Okay, next up we have Edith Fuentes. Welcome, Ms. Fuentes. Whenever you're ready, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, good evening. My name is Edith Fuentes. I am a grandmother of a kid at San Miguel School. And I can give you specific examples as to why the process of getting a TB test is scary to begin with, costly. And then you need transportation sometimes to go there. Your family works from 7 till 7. Nobody can take you there. Example, in my family, when we came to this country, we had to have the blood test, the TB test, and all that wonderful examinations, which is fine, it's great. I had it a long time ago, so I don't know if those records are available. The second scenario of another family member is that we went to a specific clinic and she received the test and it turned red and it was a little, not that big, a little bit of, I guess, inflammation, but it turned red and it was like, oh my God, you have, TB. Or now you have to do this exam and now you have to take this medicine and you have to come every Friday for a blood test. And this will go on for about 6 months. In the meantime, this person could not volunteer at the school. Another example, we went for another family member. Of course, he had to have the test also. And this doctor decided that it was better to have a blood test, which he did, and then x-rays, right? And he was clear. But the idea of having to take a test is very scary because you would be considered that you do have TB or you have had exposure to it. Like, for example, if I go and take the test, I haven't been out of the country since 1999. I haven't had the test because what if a little red spot appears on my arm? Then, I would have to go and do all these treatments. I don't want to, and I wouldn't be able to volunteer.
Thank you very much. Thanks for sharing. This works. Okay, next up is Elsa Nunez. Yes.
Hi, everyone. So I'm here to continue on the TB testing. So because Sunnyvale District is always talking about equity, and I find that it's not equitable to be asking for TB tests and to be asking for fingerprinting on top of that. That's just putting barriers for our parents or our schools. I think this is gonna have repercussions in every school, not only in Title I schools, but I think the biggest repercussion is gonna be in Title I schools. Because our parents are already disengaged because they have to work so many hours, because all of this, and then we're asking them to do the TB test. Many of them are afraid, many of them are undocumented, and we are, at least in Latin America, we're vaccinated when we're little, and our TB test more than likely will come out positive. The county gets informed and the people gets afraid. So they don't want to go through that, and you are taking away the opportunity for our parents to volunteer at our school. So when parents don't volunteer, they miss on opportunities to know what their kids are learning, how they're getting along with other students, all of that. And it's just for TB testing. So if we cannot avoid doing the TB test, at least I'm hoping that you can provide the TB test, and a TB test that is a blood test, so they don't have to go through all of those steps. And the economic burden for them, it's big. Not for everyone, but at least you should consider to make it free for the parents of the students of Title I students. So same thing with the fingerprinting. It's so scary as an undocumented person to go and get your fingerprints taken. You don't know what they're gonna do with them. So if you can help us educate our parents to tell them what's gonna be done with their fingerprints and why do we need them. If it's for fear of a lawsuit, again, if we're afraid of a lawsuit and that's why we're doing fingerprints, could we please just take the economic burden in the district instead of bringing it to the parents? I'm not hoping for a discounted price, I'm hoping for them to have it for free. Because there's so many barriers for parents to volunteer and putting up some more, it's just not fair. So people with insurance can just go and do it. I could have gone and got my fingerprints, but I was so upset about this that I have not done mine because I want everyone to have access to it. So, and I volunteer. I mean, well, I'm not supposed to, I guess, but I'll push my way in. But I want everyone to have that opportunity to engage at school, to see what their kids are doing and how they're getting along with their peers. So that, like, you can only see when you go to school and volunteer. So please take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nunez. Okay, thank you so much. And we do have one comment online. So whenever that speaker is ready, please begin.
Peggy Brewster?
Yeah, can you hear me? Hello. Good evening. My name is Peggy Brewster, and I have a second grader at Bishop. Since the district is considering construction on several campuses, I'd like to urge you to include and expand green spaces for outdoor hands-on learning. The demand from the community was clear in the facilities master plan. Our district should bring outdoor learning spaces and lessons to all campuses. Green spaces connect us to nature and build curiosity about our surroundings. Our kids will learn where their food comes from and lay foundations of healthy eating habits. Through regular outdoor education, we can raise a generation that is aware and educated and ready to engage in conservation and stewardship to address the profound environmental challenges we face. Even if we cannot commit to a district-wide outdoor learning program yet, we can put in irrigated green spaces and raised beds, at least half a bed for each classroom on every campus. Sunnyvale School District can decide now to build the infrastructure for the environmental literacy education we strive to provide for our youngest global citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brewster. Okay, did anyone else with the raised hand? No, okay. All right, well, thank you very much. Public comment period is closed. We're on to item 8, presentations. 8A is Vargas Elementary School. Welcome.
Thank you. Hopefully my partner returns. She did. Great, you're back. Hi, everyone. I'm Catherine Armstrong. I'm the principal at Vargas Elementary School, and we are excited this evening to present to you a little bit about our lovely little school in Sunnyvale here. This is a picture of a project that we shared a little bit about last year, in which students advocated to paint this blank shed. We shared this in our presentation last year, and they wanted to beautify it because they were looking out the window doing their writing and saw a blank wall and wanted to look at something more appealing. So we, Mrs. Matsuyama mostly did a lot of research on the types of paint we could use and what we might be able to do to bring this vision to life. And here is our wall that they got to create. Every student has a handprint, every staff has a handprint. Thank you, Brant. Oh, here we go. For approving this. We worked with him too. So it was a really neat thing for our school to be able to do during a really difficult year and just returning back to campus. It was really special. I can. Okay, so we decided, based on some ideas that I heard, that we would take you on a little field trip to our school. At Vargas, we call field trips learning excursions. So we're going to take you on a learning excursion to Vargas School. And in any field trip or learning excursion on a campus, Typically, a teacher will build background and share with the students what they're about to learn and experience on the trip. So we wanted to build a little background about our school year last year, since we presented to you at the beginning of the year last year and a lot of time has passed, but really focus most of our time on what you'll see on campus this year. So last year, we had a lot of great successes, bringing students and families back to school and really reconnecting them to what in-person school looks like. We really prioritized working on building trusting relationships with our families and students, so they felt that connectivity and felt safe in our learning environment. We had incredible resiliency among staff as well as our families. I really have to give our staff tremendous credit for all that they did last year. They really laid a foundation of just making such a warm, inviting learning space for our students, even though it was a very stressful school year for many reasons. Students and families would never know that. And I'm just impressed by all that they did to create that learning space, that safe space during such a tricky year. We were able to restructure our MTSS process, which Mrs. Matsuyama will talk about in a little bit. And we really focused on Tier 1 and Tier 2 reading and interventions, especially in our kinder, first, and second grade levels. There were, of course, challenges, mostly navigating COVID. That was quite a roller coaster. As mentioned before, there were lots of absences among students and staff, and this really made sustaining momentum on different initiatives that we set out to tackle for the year tricky. We had a lot of goals in the beginning where we got interrupted or we weren't able to carry out in the way that we had envisioned in August. This year, to tell you a little bit more about our students, something that you had asked about, and it makes a lot of sense. This year, our student enrollment is 413 students, TK through 5th grade. 50% of them are Latinx, 40% of them speak Spanish or come from Spanish-speaking households. 41% of our students are socioeconomically disadvantaged, and then 43% of our students are multilingual or ELs. We really want to be focusing a lot on our multilingual students this year for a variety of reasons that you will see in the data, but really also to understand who our multilingual students are. Their profiles vary dramatically from student to student and in grade level to grade level. Predominantly our Spanish-speaking students, our multilingual students are Spanish-speaking, and then this group of students ranges from newcomers and then long-term English learner profiles. And what we've noticed, especially in grades 3 through 5, we have an increased number of either at risk to be long-term English learners or long-term English learners. And I think going through about 2.5 years of learning either online or in a disrupted format has kind of played into our ability to reclassify as quickly as we would like to normally do so. So hopefully we'll see an improvement this year. The data, so you saw district data. This is our site data. What we've really tried to emphasize with our staff as we've shared this data is that this isn't easy data to look at. It's hard. We really want to acknowledge it because it doesn't give us information, but we can't dwell on it. We need to take this information and move on and really think about how we're going to address the needs of our students and the great discrepancy between how our overall students are performing and our English learners. There was a question about how our EOs are performing, and really that is the difference between, they are counted in the overall graph that you see. So it would be the difference between the ELs and the overall. So they are still outperforming our ELs quite a bit. This is for our benchmark data, language arts, and here we have math. As you can see, math especially is an area for focus for Vargas, and really how we are supporting our students that are learning English and learning math concepts is where we're going to be spending a lot of our time. This is a quick snapshot of CASP data, and again, this is our opportunity to acknowledge it. It's hard to look at. It's hard for me to look at. I think it was hard for our 3rd through 5th grade teachers to look at. I appreciated the comment earlier about how this is the first time all of these students took this type of test. No student had had this experience prior to last year. So in a way, it is really a baseline where we can start and hope to grow from here. And I think all we can do is go up, and I think we will. Math is harder to look at, and that makes sense. We really spent a lot of our time last year not only focusing on building relationships, making sure students felt safe at school, but really our intervention was mostly focused on language arts. On a slightly brighter side, this is benchmark data from this year, and thank you to Jonathan Watts for also kind of sharing and highlighting our school. Like I mentioned, we focused last year on literacy interventions, and specifically kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, with our DSS, or last year was SEO TOSA, our para staff. They really focused on those grade levels, and we see gains in those areas for language arts. Our beginning of the year math data reemphasizes the work that we need to do. Thank you, whoever is doing the button. So what does this tell us? So if you think back to the slide right before this, it does tell us that intentional interventions work. We focused our MTSS process and monitored 128 students last year. That means these are students that were regularly discussed at grade levels with that MTSS lead at least once a month, if not 2 or 3 times a month. We had ELA interventions in place, and we were able to offer pullout or a double dose to 71 students last year. We had tier 2 groups that were offered by our district SEO TOSA, not district, our SEO TOSA, as well as our para staff. We had 70 students enrolled in summer school, and I really credit our teachers for focusing on the students that needed to be there and really doing the outreach to make sure that they attended. We really focused on our language learners, and 54 of the students that attended for Vargas were our language learners. And then also we had a partnership with the Family Engagement Institute, where we did outreach with our kindergarten and TK families to enroll in this course in the beginning of the school year, where they really focused on literacy and literacy in the home and bridging the connection from home and school. And I think that also is part of the reason why our 1st grade data is looking so strong. And then our data tells us that we have a real sense of urgency, and we have work to do, and we're ready to do it. So these are our 4 goals for the school year. Building student and family relationships. That's not done, it never will be. So we worked on that last year. We have laid great foundation. We just need to continue to deepen that work so we really understand our families that we serve. Math instruction and ELD instruction will be a focus, and then really focusing on an assets-based approach. What can our students do, and what can we learn from their families? So just a little bit more information about that asset-based approach. Really what we're working on in all of our meetings as educators is shifting how we speak about students, making sure we're addressing what they can do and what they're still working on, really a more goal-focused conversation as opposed to this is what they can't do. All of our students come with wonderful assets, and we need to focus on what they can do so we can have those high expectations for each and every one of them. We want to learn from our families. Our families teach us a lot. They are their first teachers. They are the experts on their child. It is our job to learn from them. And we want to make sure learning is accessible and engaging to all students. We need to learn what different entry points we might have in lessons so that all students are engaged and lessons and learning is personalized. I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Matsuyama about building relationships.
So 1 year ago, when we were standing here telling you we were so excited about this new initiative, excuse my voice, I have a very residual cough that is not contagious. Putting it out there now so everybody's comfortable. And the Parent Teacher Home Visit Association came and did some opt-in PD with our staff last year. We have renewed momentum this year. We started off in September and had our entire teaching staff trained. Some were retrained, and we have many support staff also trained to go on these visits with teachers. The focus of the visits are not to provide resources and not to go and tell you what your child needs to work on. They're really there to learn from the family, to hear what your hopes and dreams are for your students. And our teachers are ready to do it. They're planning, they've been calling homes and wanting to set up appointments to go visit soon. Each teacher has a goal of 3 home visits this year. More is great, but we want to start small and manageable for them. And I wanted to address one question that had come up in the questions were about compensation. Yes, of course, absolutely. Staff that are supporting this will be compensated for their time as well as their setup and debrief. So every visit has a debrief opportunity where the partners that go talk about what went well, what they learned from it, how might they share their learning with their other teachers, and compensation and debrief, yes, okay. And then we would like to visit every single family in our school. Logistically, that may not be possible this first year, but the goal is to work smart. So for example, we have twins in a grade level, and we know the 2 teachers that have those twins are planning on going together to visit so that it's equitable and both twins get a visit from their teacher. So our teachers are getting creative with that. How else are we building relationships? We continued our welcome videos this year. We know that lowers anxiety for many students when they can see their teacher before the first day of school. So our teachers prepared that, which we sent out. We had an in-person welcome event where students got to meet their teachers also in person. And our parents are coming back onto campus. So in the mornings, they can come onto the blacktop. It's very different from last year where they dropped off at the gate. And just continuing building that communication with our parents casually and in meetings. We have an amazing outreach staff that are the front lines when parents walk through the door, and they are friendly, they connect with our families, and they connect them to the resources that they need. Parent-teacher goals conference were last week. Ours were a little bit parent-teacher goals conferences, yeah, is that what it is? Okay. Were last week, and they were a little bit different this year. A lot of our teachers started off with not the hopes and dreams question, because we want to keep that for the home visits, but what do you love most about your child? That was the opening line for many of our teachers. And as a parent, I felt, wow, if somebody asked me that, I could go on because I'm the expert on my child, right? And we really wanted to have families guide that conversation, even though it was a parent-teacher conference. They know the most about their student, and then the teacher can partner with them and tell them how to best support. And then we're continuing our family outreach and education this year with PK, Parent Institute for Quality Education. I think we're in our 3rd week now, and we have 20 Spanish-speaking families in the Spanish class and 14 English or other language families in the other class. And I remember the other thing, sorry. It was about the parent-teacher home visits and a location that would be preferable for families. If families don't want someone coming into their home, absolutely we'll honor that. We just don't want to do it at school. We really want it to be on a neutral turf, so it could be at the park, maybe outside the library. It could be on Zoom if families are comfortable with that. As you can tell, both of these that were done last year, we went to their homes. And in general, teachers that have kind of proposed this in conferences last week were met with overwhelmingly positive responses. Like, yes, please, we would love for you to come to our home, so. Okay, MTSS. So as Mrs. Armstrong shared and Jonathan Watts shared earlier, we restructured MTSS at our school last year. Coming back from COVID, it felt like Were we accounting for every single student, especially the ones that needed additional support? I think my personal vision with MTSS last year was that not one student was going to slip through a crack. And in that process, we restructured how we're monitoring our students. We monitored 128 last year, which is a very large number. We embedded that data conversation about students that need tier 1 support, tier 2 support, or even tier 3 support, not only in grade level meetings, but in staff meetings where we talked about students with the teacher that had them last year, maybe a grade level team member that could bounce ideas or strategies off of you. So all of those data-driven meetings and collaboration, I think, did contribute to those bright spots in our data in kindergarten and first grade for literacy. We want to replicate that with math and continue that this year. We're very proud that we were able to start our tier 2 groups 2 weeks earlier than we did last year, which gave us 2 weeks more of additional instruction and double dosing for those students that need it the most. We're currently already serving 79, and I think actually that's at 84 now. So it's increasing, and we're working really smart. We're constantly looking at our groups and we're adjusting based on their progress. The progress monitoring piece is something we really focused on last year so that students are where they should be. If they don't need to be in the tier 2 pullout group, they should be back in class with their teacher. Thank you. Okay, ELD, always a focus, will always be a focus, and it's so important because we will always have students who become fluent, great, but they're still going to be learning academic language, right? And then we have students with a different profile coming in that are newcomers or may be stuck in that middle zone that will still need additional language instruction. So we really want to refocus on the standards, the ELD standards, ELD framework, have our coaches focus on using those tools so that our designated ELD instruction is designated ELD instruction. It's focused on the language. Learning and language goals are something we're revisiting with our teachers this year. Students need to know what they're learning. When they have a target, then they can shoot for that target and meet that expectation, no matter how high it is. With the right supports, they can meet that. Last year we shared that due to COVID's restraints that we were doing self-contained designated ELD. It's possible, it can be done well, but it's hard. And it's hard to target different proficiency levels when you have multiple proficiency levels in your class. So this year we are rotating our students again so that they are able to really target the language if they're a beginner language speaker or somebody who might be practicing their academic language a little bit more. And then our measure of success and fluency is LPAC. So we do want to see that our students are transferring those skills that they're learning in ELD. And the LPAC is designed on ELD standards. So if we are focusing on those ELD standards and teaching those test taking skills, we're hoping that'll generalize to LPAC data. Okay, we also talked about this a lot last year and it was mentioned a little bit today as well. And something a very passionate part of our learning excursion for me is the Social Justice League. This was born during COVID, and it was when I was a coach at Vargas when we had just a group of coaches and teachers that wanted to come together and think about how might we start integrating social justice into our curriculum and building, really teaching to the whole child and preparing them for the real world. So it has continued, the work has continued, and currently we have some social justice literature that was purchased for us from an outside organization. And the Social Justice League has created lessons around those books. They're going to be used in classrooms. We still have designated ELD lessons that are focused on the social justice domains, which are listed below: identity, diversity, action, and justice. So it's not a standalone, it could be a standalone lesson. Like today we're going to talk about identity, which we did in August, but that's something that's embedded and integrated into content areas. Additionally, this year we are focusing on inclusion We have many of our special ed students mainstreaming into classrooms for whatever time is appropriate for them. Many are joining for morning meetings, that social emotional time, that community building time.
All right, so for math, and focusing on this area that is definitely a need at Vargas, we really need to take a step back and take a look at what our vision is for that math block. It varies from grade level to grade level, and part of the great thing about some of these walkthroughs that we're doing as leadership teams is we really get a better sense of what math currently looks like, which will help us build a vision for what we hope it to look like soon. So that is our first step, really thinking about the workshop model. We focused on Writer's Workshop for several years. It's a well-oiled machine at this point. It's a pretty consistent practice and structure that's in place. So really stressing that this is a similar structure that we can have in place for math that still allows time for conferences with the student, small group instruction, an opportunity for students to explore and do different tasks independently as well after they've had their mini lesson. We really want to revisit the importance of using manipulatives. We find that there are many gaps in our students' learning, especially in grades 3 through 5. So really understanding the standards, how they build from grade level to grade level, and then also diagnosing what gaps students have and how can we make sure they have those foundational concepts. One of the best ways to do that is with a manipulative. There's so much that they're doing and manipulating, and just that physical touch really helps them understand different math concepts. We started some of this PD last year with the math modules that you may have heard about that our district is focusing on. So finishing those up so that we can move forward and really understand what those key standards are at each grade level that we want to explore deeply and not being so broad in our instruction. And then with learning about those gaps and needs, what strategic tier 1 and tier 2 interventions are we going to put in place, and what does that look like? A tier 1 and tier 2 intervention shouldn't be a separate version of what just happened whole class. We need to do it differently. So really working with our staff and determining what differently looks like for that group of students. And then just making sure our tasks are rigorous and language rich. All math assessments now involve a lot of language. And so really understanding the language of math for both our teachers that are teaching it and then putting it into digestible chunks for our students. And we can't forget science. We are a science school. Coming back last year, it was great to be able to reopen the lab and have that hands-on experience there in the lab. There were other settings on campus that got less attention just because of capacity. We're excited to bring those spaces back to life again this year. So each month, students will visit the lab space twice, so every other week. And then on the off week, they will either visit the Maker Lab or the garden. So they will experience all different settings throughout the month. And then really focusing our instruction on that those hands-on experiences in those spaces. We want to make sure we increase the number of STEM opportunities after school in KLAS. And our instructional coach is working with our coordinator to do so. And then bringing back science nights is another focus for us. We're excited to have those back on campus, kind of relearning what to do. It feels like it was a long time ago that we did a family night like that. So just getting back into the groove of that and welcoming families back to do fun, hands-on activities with their kids. And then really exploring next steps. We had this on, I think, in our presentation last year. We didn't really have as much capacity to explore next steps as much as we wanted to, but really thinking about how do we set ourselves apart as a science school, knowing that everybody teaches science. How do we make this experience unique and different for Vargas students? Is it that we really look into other professional development opportunities to increase engagement in the lab settings Is it that we look into different activities that would make us more of a STEAM focus? Those are things that our science team are going to be working on this year. We actually have our first kind of release day meeting next week to plan some upcoming activities and really revisit that vision. And then there was a question about after school learning opportunities, and kind of like science nights, we kind of had to relearn how to do these. We brought some activities back last spring, courtesy of PTA, which was great. They were very low cost activities. We had soccer and chess last year, and it was clearly a need because we've never had enrollment like we did. We had 80 kids in soccer. Usually we'll get like 30. And then we had 50 kids for chess. So it was definitely, families and kids were hungry for these types of activities. So we really want to get those up and running earlier. And we have. PTA is sponsoring choir right now, and I know they want to bring back soccer and chess, just so that our students have these extended learning opportunities and enrichment opportunities after school that they might not have otherwise. And then we're also, just in a couple of weeks, bringing UFRAT art to our 3rd through 5th graders. Of course, we have KLES, and our enrollment is almost at capacity. Last year, we were not quite there most of the year, and we're there now, which is great. And this year, we're serving students from kindergarten through 5th. Not too many kindergartners yet, but more than we've ever served before in this program. So we're excited to be able to provide that after school enrichment opportunity for more families than just 2nd through 5th. We are in progress of getting staff-run tutorials and enrichment up and running. We definitely want to have more content-focused enrichment and tutorials for our students. And we'll be working with our teachers on what that can look like in a flexible way for them to make it appealing. Because they work very hard for the 6 hours of the school day. So we want to make sure it's palatable and something that feels like it is going to really increase the learning in their classroom. And then we have some great student leadership opportunities that meet in the school day, but also after school. Our green team and zero waste groups are just about to get going. They help us at lunch, as well as just keeping our campus looking great. Green team actually also does a lot of research on just environmental science. The teacher does a great job leading that. And then we have our 2 leadership groups, junior coaches, and our student council. And we hope you enjoyed your visit. If you're wondering who that is, it's Mr. Delgado. I just wanted to say, I think we are ready to do the work this year. We have a great staff to help us do the work. They did incredible things last year, given a really challenging situation. And we feel like we have some freedom to really get in there and make this happen and really see the progress that we know our students can make. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Well, before we do questions, we have to do public comment. Nancy, did you have a clarifying question before public comment, or? Okay, if there's any member of the public who wishes to ask a question or comment on this presentation, please use the raise hand feature now. Okay, seeing none, board, Nancy? You're still muted, sorry. Nancy, can you unmute?
Sorry, I'm going to be leaving after this questioning. It's after 11 o'clock on the East Coast. And I know we all don't function as well with later hours, but I wanted to stay through this presentation. I'm excited at the direction that you're moving. And I would invite you to engage the parent community and ask them what they might want to see in a deeper science focus for their children. Because I saw you reaching out with staff and such, but I want to invite, as your family building, to ask that question of your parents as well. I imagine a lot of them might have ideas that you might not have thought of. So I want to make sure that that voice and the student voice is included in that, in the journey that you're taking.
Thank you. It's a very good idea and something that we need to be doing. Our parents also have a lot to offer in terms of what they might be able to lead or teach our students.
Correct. And
different science fields.
Right. And I know you would get to that, but it's just what bubbled up out of your engagement with parents is just that opportunity when you're home visit or other, just to ask that question, to build them into the design of your new program as well. So awesome work, and looking forward to next scores coming forward, showing more growth happening. So thank you.
You too.
Thank you. Board, please share your questions or comments for Kathy.
Well, yeah, great presentation. Thank you guys for all the work you do. Yeah, I know that you guys are super engaged with your families, and it was great to see that you are having family visits. That's very, very nice. So you have your science teacher designated for that. So you go kids go once a week, or how does it work?
Thank you for reminding about that question. Yeah, so we actually don't really have a dedicated science teacher. So we did when I first started at Vargas, and just kind of due to funds and how we allocate those, we shifted her into a more instructional coach role where she supports science, and she supports that program, and she supports teachers in planning their lessons, with the idea of kind of helping them have some more ownership of the lab space, and helping them become more comfortable in teaching those lessons in those spaces. It definitely is hard to sustain some of the spaces, because she has a lot of other roles on top of just focusing on science. She is supporting reading instruction and supporting other classroom instruction and working closely with teachers to do so. So she is stretched. So that has been something that has been a little trickier, really being able to sustain spaces like the garden and the Maker Lab, knowing that she has lots of things to do on top of helping us with our science program.
Good. And how can we support you? What do you need?
Well, I think just visiting us and being with us on campus from time to time each year, I think that really helps us have those conversations about like what you're seeing and how those or what we need kind of organically comes out of those visits. I think we are so fortunate to have such a supportive board, and I think just if we are continuing to go with these programs of choice, just having your support or maybe brainstorming with you how we can keep them sustainable at school sites, knowing there's lots of other demands to make sure our students are progressing in the way that they need to be.
Michelle or Jeff, any thoughts?
No, just thank you. Thanks for all the work you guys do and some fun, exciting things you guys are working on.
Yes, we're excited. It'll be a good year.
Yeah, it was such a thorough presentation, and I really felt like I just got a great walkthrough of Vargas and like everything you're doing. So I really appreciated that, and I think I'm really excited to go to some of your community events. So
we will let you know when they are.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Captain. Thanks, everyone.
That's great. Okay, we're on to 8B, our presentation on bond construction and future project updates with Brent Burns, Director of Facilities and Operations.
Good evening, board, good evening, cabinet, and good evening, members of the public who are joining us via Zoom. Tonight, we get the exciting opportunity to update you all on Measure G bond, upcoming construction in regards to transitional kindergarten and kindergarten playgrounds, as well as Ellis Elementary School and the progress that we're making there. So I want to open by saying that we crossed another huge milestone over the summer, and that is that we have officially exhausted all of Measure G's funds. And I will say that we successfully exhausted them because of all the projects that we accomplished, both with the current board direction as well as previous boards, current cabinet as well as previous cabinet. We accomplished projects from keystone projects such as like modernizations at Bishop, San Miguel, Lakewood. We put in HVAC at many of our campuses, increased site security, took care of infrastructure projects, an extremely wide range of projects that all went extremely well and will be capital investments for the district and benefiting us for years to come. Now, we are in the Measure GG bond. Doesn't have to do with this. We are taking an approach in regards to universal pre-kindergarten and looking at this kindergarten modernization of playgrounds as two-pronged approach. One, we're addressing a lot of maintenance issues that needed to be addressed, whether it be old tiles that needed to be replaced, asphalt that's at the end of its useful life, and play components that are a little outdated. The other approach that we're looking at this from is taking a holistic planning approach to what we want our universal pre-kindergarten program to be. So we're taking this opportunity to really increase curb appeal, to design these playgrounds for our earliest youngest learners, and making sure that we're planning for the future as this program continues to roll out. We have taken a very collaborative approach with our architect team, as well as specifically landscaping architects who know all of the studies, research, and current trends going on around the Bay Area, as well as California. We take all those components into consideration and then have a couple members of the district, as well as cabinet, when we provide updates, review to make sure that we are going in the right direction and we're going to give a fantastic product to the end users ultimately. Now we'll turn it over to Myron Kong, Capital Projects Manager for Sunnyvale School District, who will speak to the specifics of each project and why we're extremely excited about this project.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you, board, for your time. There. All right, so to start off, even though these projects we're doing at 5 campuses are billed as kind of refurbishment and maintenance, we're really taking this as an opportunity to kind of go above and beyond and not just replacing kind, but really enhance what is currently there. So it's really taking this as an opportunity, like what Brett was saying, to increase curb appeal and really showcase this growing part of the district, or program in the district. So one thing that when we work with the architect and landscape architect is we really wanted them to, as part of the showcasing this, like I want any parent to walk down the street by that playground to automatically recognize that this playground is meant for young students, just by its cheerful choice of cheerful colors, the amenities out there, that like this playground is not meant for the older students. This is something nice, this is something special, this is something for younger students. Next part, to kick off this project, we met with Campbell Unified School District to kind of see tour some recently completed playground projects, just to get a sense of the latest thoughts and trends and what's out there. And we walked away with a broad range of different things that are currently being used, but I think we also got some good feedback on what worked for them. And I think it's just one way to think about it is like a lot of the playgrounds that we're modernizing now are between 10 to 15 years old, and a lot has changed in that span. So that's something that we took away from that kickoff meeting. So to just kind of start off, the main play structure that we have, we're looking to retrofit and make it converted from a kindergarten play structure to a TK play structure. So we brought on a consultant to give us some recommendations on one hand on what we need to do for maintenance, but on the other hand, how we can retrofit it to make it work for younger students. So step heights, reach heights, different play accessories that we can add to it to really make it stand out and work in this context. Another thing that we're trying to do is taking lessons learned from recent projects at Cherry Chase. So we're introducing synthetic turf underneath the play structure. So there's a lot of play tile that's currently under the current play structures that are at its end of life. So we're just, rather than replacing in kind, we're adding the synthetic turf to really give that soft cushioned surface that will protect the students, but also enhance the aesthetics of a kind of a softer, more natural play area. So the synthetic turf is not there to replace real grass, but it's just to replace the play tile. Next. Oh. That's all right. So the next thing I'm going to get into is kind of like the play amenities. There's one thing that we really focused on was really an inclusive grouping of play structures and equipment. So part of that, what that means is at the grade level, we want this playground not just to be for the able-bodied student, but anyone that that at grade level they can go into and just, you know, those who need accommodations that can just use it as is. So for example, that green play, the green center. So this is an example of a tactile play panel. So that with that, that's all at grade level, and I'll think we're introducing. Sorry. Another thing we're introducing is a playhouse. It's called the Nook. Thanks, man. That's another thing that another play element that we want to feature that has tactile play features at the grade level, so you don't have ground level, so you don't have to be able-bodied to fully utilize it as well. And we also really want to focus on music and other elements of that sort. Am I at the end of it here? Yeah. Okay, let's go back more. Last feature that we're trying to focus on all our playgrounds is shade, because we really want to promote outdoor learning. And part of that is you need to be protected from the elements, right? So as much as we can, we want to bring in the largest shade structure as we can on each of these sites and have built-in seating and tables on them, right? So not only does it double as an outdoor learning space, but obviously for meals and lunch. The only exception to this would be of the 5 sites would be at Fairwood. Fairwood is unfortunately, is a little bit smaller of a site, but on the other hand, it has 2 large trees that provide really good shade for the canopy. So rather than tearing out those trees and trying to put in a small little shade structure, we just want to utilize what's there. And we told the architect to add in permeable pavers and add in seating there, so we can leverage the canopy that's there that will provide that shaded protection. So that's kind of the main highlights there, and Brant and I are very excited to see this come into construction in the summer.
Yeah, and I know I mentioned it in the summary, but this is being funded by both routine maintenance as well as developer fees. That is in a conscious effort to minimize the impacts to our measured GG bond. Before I click on, is there any questions on this part?
Well, this is a clarifying question.
Yeah.
So for Sam, I think you mentioned that the Fairwood Garden wouldn't be touched, like,
No.
right? So what about for San Miguel? There's also a garden there.
There is, and it will not be touched or impacted in any negative way. Right.
I'm just excited to like see them. Maybe we had to go play on it or something.
I know, we still gotta do the walk to Columbia too.
So this comes from a different fund that is not the bonds that we have.
Correct.
Because that one, we're keeping it for the plan that we made with the architects.
Correct. All right, now into the extremely fun part. Ellis Elementary School. As I mentioned earlier, we're now in the measured GG bond funding for this project, and progress has continued to go extremely well, and I will knock on wood when I say that, but everything is hit milestones. We've hit milestones from the start of the project up until right now. We are into a phase where we've completed the administration building modernization. We've finished the modernization in rooms 11 through 15, and we are at the waterproofing stage of all the 2-story classroom buildings. The one change from the presentation last time is that phase 2A in the top right corner, that is Kinderland. The building to the east or furthest to the right that runs north to south there, we've moved that up in the schedule for the contractor. Looking at timelines, we really wanted to ensure that Kinderland is complete and done for the start of the 2023 school year. And in order to, I can't say guarantee, but 99% guarantee, we pulled that up in the schedule and turned that area over to the contractor back in August. It squeezed the site a little bit more than we had wanted to, but working with Stephanie and her team, they were able to find other locations for the students. Staff has adjusted, kids have adjusted, and that has been a huge bonus for us in this project. And then I will turn it over to Myron to discuss specific updates on the buildings.
Thanks, Grant. So as Grant was saying, we're really looking at this we're really looking to wrap up phase 1. Phase 1 is concerning what remains of phase 1 is really building B. Building B is a 2-story classroom, 22 classrooms versus second story. So this picture was taken about a week ago, and currently we're trying to, the major milestone we're trying to hit right now is the construction term is to dry in the building, but in layman's terms, it's to weatherproof the building. So they're roofing the building now as we speak, this week, and they hope in the next couple of weeks, the roofing will be done, and the plaster will be done, as well as the windows. And by that time, everything will be weather sealed. And at that point, the contractor can really focus on the interior. And once the exterior work is largely done, they will also focus on building out the roundabout, the driveway and the parking that is along all, that kind of comes up from Central and wraps around Olive Avenue. So by the end, by spring, all that corner of that site will be done. So that's building B. And like Brent was mentioning earlier, we released the contractor to begin work early at building L to get some, get an early start to kind of relieve the schedule impacts of it. And so so what you're seeing there on the image on the left-hand side is facing Fair Oaks. And that's the pad, and we're focusing right now on getting the underground utilities done. And we'll be pouring the foundations in a few weeks. And by December, the American Modular Systems is going to be training in their modular buildings, which will be the new kindergarten buildings at the end of the day.
Oh, there we go. And we are going to continue to update the board on the spending of the project. Here you can see everything that has been invoiced to date. You can see the 4 change orders that have been approved. And we are operating at a very good ratio in regards to change orders and overall invoice amount. I think currently it's 3%. And a large majority of that is due to the $111,000 the city of Sunnyvale charges us for an offsite permit. So overall, it's going really well. I smile and I knock on wood again. I know that's the last slide, but we did want to update the board on Sunnyvale Middle School. Storefronts first. PO issued, materials ordered. And now we're just finalizing the schedule to install new storefronts at Sunnyvale Middle School. And I know that's just a small.
When you say storefronts, you're talking about those doors?
Yes.
Double doors.
Yes.
I was pretty sure, but I just wanted to make sure.
Yes, I know it's a small little project, but like that is, I know that was brought up a couple times, so we wanted to give you that update. In regards to Sunnyvale Middle School as well and the facility master plan. Monday, we're going to be meeting with Isabel as well as Lori, and we're going to be interviewing 5 architecture firms that we have deemed to be on a short list for qualified to work on our projects. As soon as that is complete, we will take the next step in issuing a RFP, request for proposal, for the projects out at Sunnyvale Middle School. So continuing to progress in the right way. And that concludes our update.
Thanks. We're going to cue the audience for public comment really quick. If there's anyone who'd like to comment or ask a question on this presentation, please use the raise hand feature now. Ready? Elliot saying no. Okay. So with that, board, any questions or comments?
Thanks for all the updates. I'm just curious, it's like I'm not Alice anymore, but that was my home for so long. Are you saying that whole parking area, like that's like the old kinder area and the old pull-ins, like all of that is gonna be done by the spring when the building's done?
So the new parking area and pull off, so if,
But like where the old kinder playground that's now just like dirt space by that, like that's all gonna be,
yes, yes,
okay.
yes. So in the
So, like-
spring, go back one.
So everything in that whole corner,
All that whole
all of
corner,
the
you have
central.
entryway into the two, I know, I know, I was waiting for that reaction.
Stay
I know. So giant parking lot, huge drop off area, that's all turned over in the spring when the buildings are turned over.
And there'll be a dedicated bus drop off loop, so we should really relieve the congestion in that
Yeah.
intersection.
Fingers
It's gonna be
crossed.
so nice.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sure there will.
There still will be,
There's
that's
always
why,
gonna be congestion at every
yes.
split. I think it's impossible to like have it be alleviated completely, but an improvement is an improvement.
an improvement and much more safe.
yeah, like,
Yeah.
we've been in conversation with Stephanie that she knows that there's gonna be some guidance and training that's gonna be.
Yeah.
To get everyone to get the traffic flowing in the right direction the first few weeks.
Field trips, look at all these field trips we have to do. Field trips to playgrounds, field trips to Ellis.
It's fun, we've taken Stephanie around the two-story building, like as it's been going on,
Uh-huh.
and she gets fired up.
Yeah.
It's fun.
That's exciting. I'll have to have a little home cooking at Ellis.
Any questions for us?
Anyone else? Okay, so I have a couple comments. One is I'm super excited about the playground refurbishments because it's like such an opportunity for joy. It's like ridiculous. It's great.
I love the word triple. I was like, yes. following
Yes,
joy.
yes, joy is good. I do want to just sort of like just throw it out there that also like when you're looking for items, and I know you've seen lots of items, but like I really like there's something really great when you walk into a place like to a playground or something, and it's like very consciously sustainable. So like if you can like I know it's a very different vibe than a lot of the kind of plastic structures that are available. But if there's ways to do things that are very sustainable, I think that it matches all those values that we were talking about in the master plan. And I would just love to see that as like starting on our campuses.
When you say sustainable, what do you mean?
So-
Sorry, Zach.
No. I was gonna say what we can look at, and a lot of these manufacturers are really good with using like 100% recycled plastic
Mhm.
on their forming, but we can confirm, we can see what their percentage of recycled versus not is on those kind of components.
Yeah, and like, like when you walk into an area and it's like, hey, it's, it's made out of bamboo or something, or it's, you know what I mean? It's like, it's made out of a material that's very eco-friendly or recycled, and like, that's like intentional, and you can say like, this is all done with intentionality. And then same thing about, also the city of Sunnyvale is super interested in what's happening.
Yes.
And so I mentioned that in the packet review, but they would love to hear from you. And this would be like a perfect thing. And then just also, when you were talking about SMS, I'm also very excited about that project. I know it will take a long time, but like, since just anything that is gonna be focusing on like, green architecture, like as we're doing that, we're hearing all this stuff from the county, all the student leadership empowerment groups, all those things that, they're very focused on, the environment, and I just think it would be a great teaching opportunity, especially since it's gonna take several years for us to get there, like to really incorporate, as much of that as we can.
Yeah, and I know like Myron coming up as an architect has like a lot of familiarity with this, but there are levels that we can design to, and Isabel, you're aware of this as well. And we can present that to you all as we're going through the RFP process. It just, generally speaking, it adds a cost, and it's just something that we have to weigh against. Like, is the added cost of going for a LEED silver, LEED gold, LEED platinum worth it? So we're happy to present it, and we will give you all the information that you need to evaluate. But that is the give and take of that one. With the Cal Green, with the Cal Green codes and like building codes now, these buildings are getting built like extremely energy efficient, extremely like environmentally friendly. Like there are
Just, it's a perfect segue for me. I would say that like, because we live in California, Title 24 is actually very aggressive towards sustainability. So we've done a comparable before, like just to get entry level LEED status meets California Building Code. That's how far California Building Code has evolved compared to the rest of the nation. So that's that's something that just to think about. Not that it's but as we interview these architects, a lot of them put a premium on their experience building energy efficient buildings. We'll certainly take that into account as we interview these architects to see where their strengths lie.
And, because their schools are so indoor, outdoor, maybe as we're looking at the outdoor spaces as well, But that was just my only thought. It was a great presentation. I think the city council's gonna love it. So whatever you put together for them, because they were like, well, Santa Clara was just here and we heard all about what they're building. What's going on with we're gonna have something, so. Anyway, but thank you.
And if you guys go to the city, you can say, look at all these great things, and wouldn't it be awesome if you gave us some land so we can build another great thing in North Sunnyvale?
We'll throw that in.
I was gonna say, should I lead with that one? So I'm here tonight. Okay.
We're showing you what great things we do, and let's do one more of those.
Yes.
We need to build them up.
And if I can just throw in a comment, Nancy texted this to me before she left. Actually, a lot of this was covered, but I think specifically to the early education and to the TK and even preschool, as we're designing to think about outdoor environments that support learning, like space for green space, areas for growing plants, places for quiet play, and apparently there's, I'm not an expert on this, but there's other standards to look at other than the ones that we look at.
So, and I was wondering it was a good question, and I actually did not know who the NAEYC was, so I did a little bit of research, and I will say that in referencing our projects against their basic criteria in regards to like 75 square feet per student on the playground, having these interactive, age appropriate, what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, play equipment. It's gonna come to me in the middle of the night. We are at their basic level standards. And we always design to ed code. That's typical. If there are other organizations or criteria that the board would like us to design to, we can make sure that we mention it to the architects. But so far, just looking at their basic requirements for what kind of certifications they would give, we're meeting them.
And then just a personal comment. Back when the Magical Bridge people came to us, they came to us first before they went to the city. They were strategic and wonderful about that. I remember wondering was, wow, well, we can't do a magical bridge necessarily at each one of our schools, but where can we include accessibility features into each of our playgrounds? And it's just really exciting to me that we're doing that. So that's wonderful. And there's a wonderful magical bridge that we should all visit here in Sunnyvale now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you.
Of course, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, all right, we're on to 9A, review and discussion of board policy 6158, independent study with Dr. Dean.
I was so excited about the playgrounds, I forgot I had to sit talk. Coming to you, board, and I'm excited about this policy. It's kind of a tooting of our own horn a little bit here in Sunnyvale, but just coming up with the updated policy for independent study. But many of these criteria, there's about 8 in particular that are highlighted with the new policy changes, but there's a few that we actually incorporated, and some of those recommendations also came from the team at Fairwood there with, trying to make decisions that our families understand when we're encouraging them about the independent study, but also when it's not working. And so that strategy that has been added into this policy of either using like MTSSs or other types of way, when we have to transition students out of the programming, so they've incorporated that into the new policy. The other exciting point, which was always a bone of contention, I would say for me personally, is that they are recognizing, some students with disabilities can benefit from independent study. And so when they have the option to be able to do so, let's look at how to do that without so many different criteria that are coming from the state. So I think that's also an added bonus for the students that this is an appropriate option for them. And so there's some other highlights with regards to these new criteria. But many of these things, when we thought about our programming last year and we transitioned into some of that new programming, many of those things that we've been doing have actually been added to this new policy. So coming for your recommendation to discuss and also move forward eventually with the acceptance of board policy 6158.
Thank you. Any comments from the public? Please use the raise hand feature now. Okay, seeing none, board, any discussion?
Just thanks for all the work with it.
Yeah, it looks great. So if there's no comments on it, I think we can ask to have it brought back on consent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is Mr. Burns again, review and discussion of transportation and policy.
Back to that. How are we not?
Welcome back.
Sorry, we were just fast on the other one.
That's fast.
I know.
It's exciting.
Okay. Good evening again. I do not have a presentation prepared, but I've sent all the attachments for this review and discussion item to hopefully get an idea of if the revisions made to the board policies from the last board meeting capture what you all were hoping to see in regards to prioritization of registration for home to school transportation.
Okay, if there's any member of the public who would like to comment on this issue, please use the raise hand feature now. Nope, seeing none.
So I think one of the main things maybe before we finalize is the safety zone areas. Like I asked one of those questions and then someone else, I think, asked a similar question, right? So I think I don't know how much work that involves and then if that's gonna push things back, but it does seem a little bit like if we're doing this holistically and we want to get this right, making sure we're getting, like we have like good criteria. It's not just like, oh, whatever, we don't know how those were created. I mean, we see it a little bit, right? But anyways, that's just my thought is if we don't feel like it's too big of a burden, that maybe putting a little bit of time into kind of like, what's the criteria and make sure we've captured the correct zones that really are the safety zone we want to capture.
Okay, definitely. Yeah, looking at what I believe the criteria was when they were created, it did look like there was one or two spots that would technically or should technically be included as well. So yes, I can review all of those areas just to make sure that I have a solid understanding of why I believe they were created as such, and we can word that into the board policy.
Yeah, and so if there's other pieces like, okay, based on what this is, it actually is like these areas need to come in. And I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I don't think that needs to necessarily come back to us for approval. Like before we go forward, I trust that like staff could go through that. So unless other board members feel differently, like you guys could just make sure that we're, like I think one of the answers said that, yeah, like being uniform district wide. It's like, yep, great.
Okay.
Go ahead. Oh, how many more safety zone areas do you think it would add, or like, do you just think it's like adding on to existing ones or kind of places?
So the two that I'm thinking of in my head that I was able to kind of like relatively easily identify would be extensions of existing safety zones. One being around the Birch and Bartlett area, I think it's safety zone 6, that feeds San Miguel. It's a little neighborhood, however, that little neighborhood is part of a bigger attendance area for San Miguel that is also on the east side of Fair Oaks. So that would technically just expand that out further.
That kind of
Yep.
extension, okay. Yeah, I'm okay with that. So do we think with that, do you have anything else, Michelle, or?
No, I mean, one of my other questions, but I think got answered right, I would just, like, I'm trying to pull it up right now and I'm not getting to it quite yet, but I think there was like the priority list. It was maybe related to the walking distance. There was some priority list where we put elementary above middle school. I'm fine if there's a good reason. I was just curious
Yeah,
And it
so,
looked like you were saying, maybe that's not actually, I was interpreting it wrong.
well, and it was probably my poor wording, but the second priority on the list is walking distance based off of the board policy 3541, and actually the revised 3541 where we increased distances.
Yeah.
What I was trying to say is that if there's more registration slots available, priority to students, all encompassing of K through 8, as long as they live past that threshold, would qualify. It wouldn't be like TK first and 8th graders last.
Yeah.
So I'll look at the wording again, but priority 2 should be all of those students living outside of the mileage threshold set out in that board policy.
Do you think it would have to like, it should be like a lottery situation or something, if there's only so many seats, or like some sort of a monitoring system, like who's on the bus, or?
So monitoring system for sure. That is one of the big benefits that we're looking forward to, is that we'll be able to issue bus passes. Like we'll know exactly who's on our bus every single day and who should be on our bus every single day. I smile when you ask that question because I've thought about that so much, whether it's a lottery or if we just take, if you have 150 students in a safety zone and you only have capacity for 80, do you just start to prioritize the students in the safety zone based off the board policy priorities? So you have students that live over 1.5 miles away from middle school. Inside the safety zone, they get first registration. And then you work your way backwards. So then we're still predicated on the priorities that you guys have.
First.
Yes.
Or, yeah.
So, but, and a lottery is another option that we can explore. That's,
Like as you get down closer to.
But that idea of like using our priority list.
like, yeah, so you're in the safety zone.
Yeah.
And then you have too many students, then you look at your priority list. So
Yeah.
next is all the students that live outside your threshold. And then English language learners, and then socioeconomic disadvantaged students. So those are,
That seems good to me.
Well, some of our safety zones are just completely out of the area, right? Like Fairwood, Lakewood, the new one that we're talking about, they're far away from, like if they're going to CMS or something, right?
correct.
Everyone in the safety zone.
Oh,
Just like
it
that.
is past the threshold.
Yeah.
So then you
Yes,
go to the next.
so then you go to the next
one.
one.
Next one.
Yes. But yes, that safety zone 7 specifically is, they're all over.
Or we figure out a way to get more buses.
He knows.
So we are,
There's
we are.
7 times, but.
Yeah, so and currently, actually at the last board meeting, you guys gave me authorization to, try to exchange 2 buses out. So we haven't looked at procuring more buses, but we have looked at updating our current fleet with grant funds.
Yeah. But we have enough buses. If there was enough drivers, we could have a couple, if we had funding, right, like.
So we
Not
have,
all of our buses are currently being used, right?
correct, we cycle through them. So we have 4 drivers, 8 buses, 4 electric, 4 CNG. We cycle through usage depending on what they're gonna be using them for. And, first generation electric buses, there have been issues here and there, where like a bus will be down for 2 weeks and they're trying to troubleshoot it, so we'll use a CNG bus. So it's nice to have a couple buses in the wings waiting for us.
We need a few, yeah.
So,
Just like we need subs, we need buses.
Well, yes, I have a question, so
Yeah.
like,
Sometimes need a break.
yeah, so for the, like, I would like every middle school student to have an opportunity to do an after-school program. Like, I would like them to either be in tutoring or, to be in sports or a club. Like, I would just love that for every single one of our middle school students. And, a lot of the kids who are on the bus who might be like living farther away or might be low income or might be an English learner, like that's just like they are hustling to get to that bus so that they can get home, so they can catch the ride. And I don't know like what the hours are of the people who are driving the bus, or like if it's possible for there to be like 2 pickup times or something.
This is when I wish I had my permission to innovate card to flash it at Mike right now.
Well, I think I am. I
Yeah.
think we are all.
And say, hey, how do we try to figure out, not that we can, but how do we try to figure out that, right? Because if there is a way.
Yeah, like, so just like, as you're thinking of looking at our transportation policy or like, the shifts of people, unless we drastically change our schedules, they're probably gonna be arriving at school at the same time, but if there's a way to look at the after-school participation for these kids, to really engage them with their interests or their support that they need, like that would just be something to think about.
okay.
But interesting. So board, can we ask for this to come back on consent?
Yeah.
Michelle, Jeff, you okay with that? Consent next time? Okay, excellent. Thank you so
Okay.
much. We're good.
All right. Thank you.
Good job, Brant. A lot of work. Now the real work begins.
I know.
The implementation.
Now the super scary part starts.
Can we stay for a second? I'm trying to look up right now, one of my other questions, sorry, just remembering.
Yeah, I have them printed out if you, like, if you
So,
know.
well, I'm just trying to look in AR, so it was my question about, there was something in the AR that made me think we could maybe use money for other stuff.
I think in the AR, so there's, I believe in the AR, there's ed code speaking to like, if a student can't get to campus, the district has potentially the option to reimburse the family the cost to get there.
Yeah.
Kind of language like that. I believe that's maybe what you're.
Yeah, so here it is. Yeah, the board policy has been created to increase the district's ability to,
I know what language you're talking about.
I don't know where it was.
No, I thought, I saw that one, that was the.
Anyway, I'm just a little bit curious, like what that, but now I can't even find what it
Like
was.
reimbursing people for driving their kid to school?
Yeah.
Oh, dear God, no.
But, yeah, and
Well, but
it's,
it was the piece in there, because that to me, like, that could be the creative piece, not reimbursing people, but like, because we can't really use a bus that holds 50 people to like take 3 kids after soccer home. But is there some other way to get those 3 kids home?
so that language is included in there because that is language included in the state board policy. And and I don't want to speak like with conviction on that because I'm not that familiar with it, but I believe it's worded that like districts have the option to reimburse families for the difference in cost of transportation to get to school based off of the closest bus stop or something along those lines. It'd be a very like negligible amount of reimbursement that the families would get, in my understanding of it.
Yeah,
But
I just know
look
that
it up.
that piece could allow, right, some creativity.
Well, it's something we can look at.
Yeah.
I don't like that idea. I think that's like a whole nest of like.
Yeah.
I think that's like a whole nest of like craziness that's gonna open up.
But we just need to be creative if we want to address helping kids when they're done with the school thing to get home after an activity, we need to be creative and look at all options.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, it's a fair thing to just look at it and find out what the cost is. If it's a hornet's nest, then we don't open it.
Well, I mean, cause just, okay, like, so for Fairwood, I know they've tried for a long time to like work with carpooling and other stuff, right? I mean, it was all about like, we're gonna start this carpooling and maybe they're gonna start it again, because, but it was just like, it was cumbersome and it was like, I think if you open, I mean, I don't know. Well, I can't wait to see what they come up with. But I don't know, I don't necessarily want to spend a lot of time on that because I feel like, I don't know.
Well, if you want to figure out helping kids after school activities, we have to get creative. Because a huge bus for 3 kids is not realistic.
Well, I think what I hear the board saying is do this first.
Yeah.
And then be open to other solutions down the road.
Yeah.
Because this is gonna be pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
Just implementing bus passes, just by that themselves, that's gonna be a process.
Then we have to get all the after-school programs to have the children participate in. Which they're not even all there yet, so. You've got time, I think.
Thanks, Brett.
Thank you.
You're awesome.
Okay, so now we are moving on to, what I know we're on, 10A, approval of substitutes and interns salary rates. And is that
Jeremy
Nishara?
Yes, good evening. This item is an attempt that HR has been working on for a couple of years, and now that we've had some space to formalize and bring the rationale for our substitute rates. You've seen the substitute the certificated rates before kind of in isolation, but we thought we would start to bring the rationale together for both the classified and certificated substitute rates across the board, as well as the rates we pay for our interns and MFTs and social workers. So recommend you approve the substitute intern salary rate rationale as presented before you.
Okay, any comments from the public? Please use the raise hand feature now. Okay, seeing none, board, I need a motion.
I motion to approve the substitutes and intern salary rates.
Well, second.
Thank you. Any discussion? That's good. That's good. Okay, let's take a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you.
Excellent.
Great. Oh, now we're on to the public hearing. Okay, I had some notes for this. It is 8:51, and I'm now opening the public
I
hearing.
think she needs to give a description of it first, right?
Oh, really? Okay,
And then
sorry.
Christina.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, I had, you know what? I was gonna ask a question about that. Okay, public hearing for the approval of resolution R 2308 regarding sufficiency of instructional materials. Christina Valentine.
Good evening, board. Good evening, public. So annually, we review our sufficiency of textbooks. You may have previously heard this as the Williams audit. The state has changed the criteria by which districts are audited for Williams. That being said, we still want to ensure that all of our students have access and sufficiency of textbooks. It's great to be a student in Sunnyvale. So with that being said, you now hold an open hearing, public hearing.
Excellent. Okay, it is now 8:52 and I'm opening the public hearing. I'll just do that for fun. Okay. If there's any member of the public who wishes to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature now. We're not seeing any, but we're gonna leave this public hearing open for at least a minute.
Say it already, it's 8:53.
Okay, it is 8:53. I'm now closing the public hearing.
We open it when we got, well, let's close it when we got.
Yeah.
Excellent. Board, we need motion.
I move to approve the resolution R 23-08 regarding sufficiency of instructional materials.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion from the board? We're ready to vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye and the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Christina.
Excellent. We're on to the consent agenda. Any item on the, item 11, consent agenda. Any item on the consent agenda is subject to review and discussion prior to being approved by the board. If necessary, any items may be removed for separate action. Public may address the board regarding any items on the consent agenda. If there's any member of the public who wishes to speak on the consent agenda, please use the raise hand feature now. Sorry for the translator. Okay, thank you. Seeing none, would the board like to pull any items for consent or would you like to make a motion?
I move approval of the consent agenda as listed.
I say that.
Okay, board, any questions, comments, or discussion, or we can vote? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, with that, the motion passes. Chair votes aye. Motion passes and.
I'll just say a quick thank you to the SIPSA, right? It's a really huge thing that we just approved. So just thank you to the gajillion people at all the school sites who work on that and then work on those goals throughout the year.
And Christina for, that's a Herculean task. Thank
Putting
you,
it all
Christina.
together.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you very much. And I believe my last page is missing. Okay. I think all I have is next meeting, right?
Yep.
Yay, okay, future meetings. Next board meeting is October 20th, 2022 at 6 p.m. at the Sunnyvale School District office. Thank you. Meeting's adjourned at 8:55. Yay.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Desmond.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, well.